Chapter 1486. In this regard, Tang Zheng could treat it calmly as if nothing had happened. Yan Qingyi believed that she was right. The world she saw, or rather the future, was different from everyone else's. Naturally, she felt superior. Ever since Yan Qingyi inherited the heavenly axiom, especially after this seclusion, she had a deeper understanding of the heavenly axiom. Not only did her combat strength increase greatly, but even her prophecy skills had improved tremendously. In the prophecy, she saw a vivid and moving scene. In the past, the scenes she saw with her prophecy were intermittent pictures. This time, however, she saw a complete picture, just like a video. There was a world of difference between the two. She saw it clearly, and it would no longer be the same as before. In this video, the world was united, and everyone was bathed in the light of the heavenly axiom. The heavenly axiom operated, and the whole world was a pure land of the heavenly axiom. It was precisely because of this scene in the prophecy that Yan Qingyi's determination was strengthened. She had always been a strong-willed person. In the beginning, she was focused on comprehending the Tao and acted alone. She did not care about the rumors outside, and even the opposition of her family at first. From this, it could be seen how persistent she was in her pursuit of the great Tao. Now she had finally found the great Tao, the heavenly Tao. She believed that she had already achieved perfection, so how could she give up the obsession in her heart just because of a few words from Tang Zheng? Tang Zheng did not know the inside story, so he asked another question. Yan Qingyi, the inner demons are in your body. The inner demons are not ordinary people. How are you going to deal with them? Don't fall into the hands of the inner demons in the end. Then you will lose more than you gain. Tang Zheng was quite afraid of the inner demons. This was because of the actions of Qi Yu and the Yellow Emperor, which made him deeply vigilant. Naturally, he did not want the inner demons to have a chance to see the light of day again. Therefore, he wanted to know how Yan Qingyi would deal with the inner demons. I've already said that the inner demons are nothing to be afraid of. The heavenly Tao can suppress him now, making him unable to cause any waves. Although he is in my body, he is like a prisoner. The day I succeed in my Tao will be the day he dies. Tang Zheng stared at Yan Qingyi. He could see her strong self-confidence. He knew that no matter how much he said, it would be useless. He didn't say anything else. The inner demons had come to an end for the time being. It might not be easy for the inner demons to escape. In addition, at the beginning, Tang Zheng and the Emperor of Heaven wanted to determine whether the inheritance Yan Qingyi received in the Heaven's Gate was the real heavenly Tao or the heavenly book. Now there was no need to confirm. She received the real heavenly Tao inheritance and not the heavenly book. The Emperor of Heaven also knew this. Yan Qingyi received the inheritance of the heavenly Tao, but she kept saying that the Fu clan had betrayed the heavenly Tao. This was definitely not something that Yan Qingyi made up. This was probably the will of the heavenly Tao. Since this was the case, the Emperor of Heaven's respect for the heavenly Tao naturally decreased. Even if the heavenly Tao dared to criticize the Fu clan, the Emperor of Heaven would definitely not accept it. The Emperor of Heaven's thoughts turned thousands of times. It was extremely complicated. He said directly, "Yao I will lend you a hand. Kill this woman who is spreading lies." When Tang Zheng heard the Emperor of Heaven's words, he could also hear many emotions in his tone. He actually believed Yan Qingyi's words about the Fu clan. He believed that the Emperor of Heaven definitely believed 70 to 80% of it. But the Emperor of Heaven had no way out. He could only refute and kill Yan Qingyi. Only then could he clear the name of the Fu clan and his own Tao. Yan Qingyi's words were equivalent to planting the seed of the inner demons in his heart. If the Emperor of Heaven couldn't get rid of it or walk out of it, then his future cultivation would be filled with difficulties. Therefore, the Emperor of Heaven could only fight with all his might. Father and daughter were connected by heart. How could the Empyrean fairy not understand her father's thoughts and situation? Her figure flashed and rushed towards Yan Qingyi. You overestimate yourself. Yan Qingyi scolded disdainfully. Her slender white hands opened and closed. A slap sounded, but it was like a sudden clap of thunder. It was so loud that it hurt the eardrums of those who heard it. The power of the heavenly Tao circulated and gathered around her body. She seemed to be in the center of a huge energy whirlpool. The outside was abnormally violent, but she was calm and peaceful. There was no danger at all. When Tang Zheng saw this scene, he was shocked. He could already feel the terrifying destructive power contained in the storm. Fu Yao, be careful. At the critical moment, he roared and rushed towards her without caring about his own safety. He tried to block this attack for her. Swish. With a flash of sword light, the hidden mysterious sword appeared in his hand. The 3 saint inscriptions lit up. The 3 straight saint inscriptions emitted a terrifying power. This was the first time the hidden mysterious sword saint inscriptions were shown to the outside world. Although there were only 3 saint inscriptions, they contained a great beauty and terrifying power. It was like a human skeleton. The reason why a saint artifact was a saint artifact was because of the saint inscriptions. Everyone's attention was attracted by the saint inscriptions. Even Yan Qingyi was no exception. It was not that she had never seen a saint artifact before, but she had never seen a saint artifact like this. She did not know much about saint artifacts, but with one look, she knew that the key was the 3 saint inscriptions. Tang Zheng, you've changed a lot in the past few days. She roared and split into 2. Part of the heavenly Tao's power surged towards Tang Zheng. At this moment of life and death, she dared to split her attention. It could be seen how confident she was in herself. In fact, she was even conceited. The Empyrean fairy saw this and was secretly delighted. She said to herself, "Father, the heavens are helping us. Since she wants to die, we'll fulfill her wish." Without anyone noticing, the Emperor of Heaven's soul had left the porcelain bottle and transferred to the Empyrean fairy's body. He wanted to help his daughter, so the best way to do so was to have his soul possess her body. This way, not only could he unleash the Empyrean fairy's strength, but he could also unleash part of the Emperor of Heaven's strength. With both of their strengths added together, one could imagine how powerful they were. No one noticed this. However, this was not completely untraceable. Everyone's attention was attracted by the hidden sword, forgetting about the painting of mountains and rivers of the gods of earth and veil in mid-air. The painting seemed to have become extraordinarily vivid, as if it had really come to life. The mountains, rivers, and lakes were all glowing with endless vitality. As the owner of the stately painting, the Empyrean fairy immediately noticed the abnormality and exclaimed to herself. She had never noticed such a change in the stately painting, so the only possibility was that her father had triggered this change. The stately painting was given to her by him, so her father knew better than her that she had not fully unleashed the power of this magic weapon before. She could not help but feel ashamed. The Emperor of Heaven sensed her mood and immediately comforted her. Yao. The stately painting was your mother's magic weapon. Today I will fully unleash its power. From now on, you will truly inherit your mother's stately painting. What? The Empyrean fairy's emotions fluctuated violently. The stately painting was actually her mother's magic weapon. Regarding her mother, there was an insurmountable hurdle in her heart. It was an eternal pain in her heart. She was never willing to mention it, but the magic weapon she had always used was her mother's legacy. She never thought of it. The stately painting is by your side, just like your mother is by your side, never leaving you. This is your mother's last wish. She has never blamed you. Every word of the Emperor of Heaven struck the softest part of the Empyrean fairy's heart. She has never blamed me? A voice sounded from the bottom of the Empyrean fairy's heart. She was skeptical, as if she was interrogating herself. This was the greatest fear in her heart. When she faced the inner demons, this fear almost swallowed her up. It was obvious how great the impact on her was. She is your mother. Why would she blame you? The Emperor of Heaven said earnestly. She doesn't blame me? Really not? The Empyrean fairy asked herself. Unknowingly, the fear in her heart dissipated bit by bit. Crack. As if something had broken, rays of light bloomed from the depths of her heart, covering every corner of her body. At this moment, the fear vanished like smoke in clouds. Her eyes lit up as she stared at the stately painting. In her pupils, a figure gradually became clear. Her mother. The person she had been deliberately forgetting. It was completely clear, just like the image she had of her mother when she was young. She was the closest person to her. Her mother smiled at her. That smile was as warm and affectionate as when she was young. Her heart completely melted. The mysterious change was silent. To read the latest novel, please visit Chapter 1487. Fear melted like ice and snow, and the Empyrean fairy's heart bloomed with light, and the shackles in her heart were instantly opened. The vital energy in her body began to roll, and it was completely different from before. She immediately noticed this change, and her heart moved. She knew that her opportunity had come. Although her cultivation was already very high, her cultivation was naturally affected by fear. Now that the fear had dissipated, she felt as if she was free. His true chi continued to rise, and so did his cultivation level. Not only that, but her connection with the mountain river map had also become more intimate. In the past, she always felt that there was a layer of paper between them, but now there was no barrier to communication. No one noticed the change in her. Her cultivation was rocketing up like a rocket. Boom, boom, boom. Bottlenecks were broken one after another. Her cultivation was broken again and again, and finally, it stopped at the 4th stage of the Mahayana realm. Tang Zheng's cultivation was only at the 4th stage of the Mahayana realm. So in a short time, she had caught up with Tang Zheng's cultivation. It could be seen how great her harvest was this time. 4th stage of the Mahayana realm. The Empyrean fairy was also shocked by her own cultivation. She didn't expect to have such a great harvest after resolving the fear in her heart. Everything between heaven and earth seemed to have changed. She was more sensitive to the spiritual energy between heaven and earth, as if she was one with heaven and earth. The celestial Varch noticed her change and heaved a long sigh. You've suffered all these years. The Emperor of Heaven knew very well that if she didn't have this fear in her heart, then her cultivation would definitely be higher than it was now. He wanted to resolve this fear at first, but it hadn't been long since it happened. The shackles in her heart were too strong, and he couldn't shake it at all. As time passed, the shackles loosened, and he was able to seize this opportunity to resolve the fear in her heart. Father, I'll deal with her, the Empyrean fairy said to the Emperor of Heaven. The Emperor of Heaven didn't hesitate, and immediately handed over the control of the mountain river map. Once again, the Empyrean fairy was in full control of the painting. She seemed to have become one with it. Just like when she was young, her mother was always by her side. The lifelike patterns on the painting of mountains and rivers of the gods of earth and Vale seemed to be connected to her mind. Attack! She roared in her heart, and her attacks were like a tidal wave, pouring out in all directions. Whoosh! The power of the mountains and lakes descended from the map of mountains and rivers. There was no wind, fire, thunder and lightning, no rocks and gales. Everything was quiet, completely unlike the chaotic scene before. However, Yin Qingyi and Tang Zheng immediately noticed that something was amiss. They raised their heads and looked at the radiant light in the sky. The painting of mountains and rivers was like a spectator. What terrifying power! Both of them had this thought at the same time. To be able to make the two of them feel this way, it was obvious how powerful this power was. Tang Zheng and Yin Qingyi had already accumulated all their strength and attacked each other with all their might. They had no time to be distracted, and neither of them took the Empyrean fairy's attack seriously. However, at this moment, the Empyrean fairy's attack was so terrifying. Their minds immediately turned upside down, and there was a different kind of change. Tang Zheng was secretly delighted, but Yin Qingyi was extremely worried. She wasn't afraid of the Empyrean fairy in the past, but the power displayed by the Empyrean fairy now was so different that she couldn't ignore it at all. However, it was all too late. She could only deal with one of the two attacks. In the end, she didn't turn around to deal with the Empyrean fairy. Instead, she treated Tang Zheng as the biggest threat and dealt with him with all her strength. Boom! The hidden profound sword and her heavenly Tao collided, and a terrifying power spread out in all directions with the two of them as the center. Like an earthquake, the ground cracked inch by inch, and the house collapsed with a loud bang, turning into ruins, causing smoke and dust to fill the sky. Yen Patian and the other two were like kites with their strings cut. They were actually unable to stabilize their bodies under the intense shockwave, and were directly sent flying, falling into the distance in a sorry state. After witnessing this scene with their own eyes, they finally understood what a terrifying battle was. The battle between the two of them could be said to be terrifying to the extreme, causing people to tremble in fear. The only exception was the Empyrean fairy. She didn't move at all, as if she was a stabilizing needle. She had already gathered all of her strength and attacked Yanqingyi in one go. Boom. With a loud sound, Yanqingyi's defensive power collapsed. After a portion of the mountain river map's power was offset, it completely hit Yanqingyi. Puff! Bright red blood spurted out from her mouth, and her face immediately turned incomparably pale. She staggered and fell to the ground. With a dong sound, she fiercely crashed into the ground, and blood flowed down her forehead. Yanqingyi had never been in such a sorry state before. This time, facing the pincer attack of Tang Zheng and the Empyrean fairy, her pride was finally ruthlessly smashed to the ground. Furthermore, it was in front of everyone's eyes. This was a powerful counterattack to her previous high profile, like a slap to her face. This was equivalent to slapping the face of the heavenly Tao, as if to show that the insufferably arrogant heavenly Tao was not invincible. There was still a way to defeat it. Tang Zheng's eyes lit up as he looked meaningfully at the Empyrean fairy. Although he had already realized that her strength had become stronger, the actual situation still far exceeded his expectations. The three types of power released their respective powers, and then disappeared into nothingness. It seemed to have returned to peace. Qingyi. When the three people from the Yan family saw this scene, their hearts jumped to their throats, and they rushed towards Yanqingyi without caring about their own safety. Qingyi, how are you? Yan Potion's face was pale as he stood in front of Yanqingyi to protect her, and said with incomparable nervousness, "Don't scare me. With me here, even if I die, I won't let anyone hurt you again." His face was resolute, as if he was facing death with equanimity. Yanqingyi crawled up from the ground. There was still blood at the corner of her mouth, and her pale face was filled with disappointment. She muttered to herself, "How could I lose? How could I lose?" She was in a daze, unable to accept this cruel reality. Tang Zheng and the Empyrean fairy did not have the slightest bit of pity. The Empyrean fairy gnashed her teeth in hatred, and said, "Weren't you insufferably arrogant just now? Now that you've lost, you can't accept reality. Humph, what successor of the heavenly Tao, it's nothing more than that." The Empyrean fairy had been influenced since she was young, and had an extraordinary reverence for the heavenly Tao. However, Yanqingyi's various actions had completely defeated the reverence in her heart. She no longer respected the heavenly Tao, but instead felt a strong sense of resistance in her heart. Yanqingyi was ridiculed. He hung his head dejectedly, just like a defeated general. "Yanqingyi, you must be responsible for your actions. You will bear serious consequences for insulting the Fu clan." The Empyrean fairy walked towards Yanqingyi step by step, as if she wanted to fulfill her words. Tang Zheng's heart tightened. The Empyrean fairy's attitude was so firm. Where should he go? Should he just stand by and watch? Or should he stop her? For the latest novel updates, please visit the website. Chapter 1488. Yan Patian stood in front of his daughter to protect her. His will was firm. If he wanted to harm Yanqingyi, then he would have to step over his corpse. The Empyrean fairy did not retreat, and approached Yanqingyi step by step. Tang Zheng glanced at the dazed Yanqingyi, and his heart skipped a beat. He had a deep relationship with Yanqingyi, although she had changed now, but if he allowed the Empyrean fairy to kill her right under his nose, he couldn't do it. "Wait a minute." Tang Zheng moved slightly, blocking in front of the Empyrean fairy, and said, "Let me say a few words to her first." "You want to protect her?" the Empyrean fairy asked with an unfriendly gaze. Tang Zheng hesitated for a moment, then said, "I'm not protecting her, I just want her to have another choice." The Empyrean fairy looked at him deeply, and said meaningfully, "She has already been blinded by the heavens. Can she listen to your words?" "I have to give it a try." Tang Zheng shrugged. The Empyrean fairy fell silent. Tang Zheng took a step forward, stared straight at Yanqingyi and said, "Yanqingyi, what the heavens have promised you is simply impossible to achieve. Why must you be so obstinate?" Yanqingyi raised her head. Her dejected emotions seemed to have disappeared a little, and said, "Tang Zheng, you have also obtained the heavenly book and comprehended the heavenly Tao, yet you said such words." "Humph. It seems that you have not comprehended the essence of the heavenly Tao, otherwise you would not be so shallow. Shallow. Tang Zheng was both angry and amused. Don't you realize that what you're talking about is like a castle in the air, something illusory? I will make all of this a reality. Yan Qingyi seemed to have regained her confidence bit by bit, and her eyes once again glowed with vigor. This was Yan Qingyi. How could she be someone who would completely lose her fighting spirit after a single failure? She was alone, comprehending the great Tao for so many years, and almost no one could understand her. She was also not scared away or admitted defeat, which showed how tenacious her willpower was. The Empyrean fairy sneered and said, "Did you see that? She refuses to come to her senses. How can you make her come to her senses with just a few words?" Tang Zheng helplessly let out a long sigh. When Yan Patian heard his sigh, his heart almost jumped out of his chest, and he impatiently said, "Young Master Tang, Qingyi is just confused for a moment. We will advise her properly, let her go." He had no choice but to plead for mercy for Yan Qingyi. Seeing Yan Qingyi's fearful expression, Tang Zheng's heart felt as if it was being squeezed as he said, "Elder Yan, she is not confused for a moment." When Yan Patian heard this, he became even more terrified, and almost knelt down in front of Tang Zheng. He said miserably, "Young Master Tang, I only have this one daughter, please let her go." "Elder Yan, you're being too serious. This is not a question of whether I will let her go or not, but whether she will let me go or not." Tang Zheng could almost foresee what Yan Qingyi would do after she became stronger and stronger. Yan Patian hurriedly shook his head and said, "No, young Master Tang, how could she be your opponent? Naturally, the situation you mentioned will not happen." Wasn't that the best evidence? Xian and V of the Nine Heavens added, "Father, you don't have to ask him to kill me?" "Humph, that would require the approval of the heavenly Tao." Yan Qingyi did not appreciate it at all, and extended her hand to push Yan Patian to the side. Yan Patian stomped his feet anxiously, and said, "Qingyi, don't say such big words. How can you contend against young Master Tang's strength?" Yan Patian purposely belittled his daughter in order to make Tang Zheng let her go. Yan Qingyi did not seem to understand her father's painstaking efforts at all, and instead went against him at every turn. She resolutely walked towards Tang Zheng, and said, "Tang Zheng, you don't believe in me, you don't believe in the heavenly Tao. This is your short-sighted loss, and you will regret it in the future." Yan Qingyi was 3 meters away from Tang Zheng, and suddenly launched an attack. "Be careful," the Empyrean fairy hurriedly reminded him. Tang Zheng was completely focused, and did not let his guard down at all. Naturally, he would not let Yan Qingyi succeed, and the light of the hidden profound sword instantly enveloped Yan Qingyi. A delicate shout rang out from the sword light, and the sword light broke open a hole. Yan Qingyi rushed out from the hole, and formed a seal with her hands. Talismans flew out from her hands, and immediately attached themselves to the hidden profound sword. The light of the hidden profound sword immediately dimmed by a lot. "Master, these talismans are very powerful." The sword spirit immediately informed Tang Zheng. Tang Zheng understood. He was not unfamiliar with talismans. Many people would use them when cultivating, but most of them were auxiliary. However, Yan Qingyi's talismans were obviously not ordinary. There were rays of light moving along a certain trajectory, and this was the difference between them and ordinary talismans. Her talismans seemed to have come to life, possessing vitality. As a result, the power was naturally incomparable. It must be that flowing light that gives the talisman such a different kind of power. Tang Zheng's fiery eyes of truth confirmed it with a single glance. He was not wrong. Yan Qingyi was not good at using magic treasure weapons, and she did not like to use them either. Now that her comprehension of the heavenly Tao had reached a higher level, she had made a new discovery. The attacks of the heavenly Tao could borrow the power of talismans, and could give the talismans a great deal of power. This was an aspect that was overlooked by ordinary people, but it could greatly increase her combat strength. In this aspect, she had only scratched the surface, so in the battle just now, she did not use it. Now that it was a matter of life and death, she finally did not dare to hide it. Bang! With a muffled sound, the talismans shattered, but the hidden profound sword also retreated. Yan Qingyi took this opportunity to brush past Tang Zheng. At this moment, the Empyrean fairy's attack came unexpectedly. The stately painting sprinkled a terrifying power. The talisman rose again. This was borrowing the power of the heavenly Tao. It was endless. Even though Yan Qingyi was injured, she was not affected much. The talisman flickered, rose into the air, and circled around Tang Zheng's body. Boom! The power of the stately painting poured onto Yan Qingyi, but did not obtain the same effect as before. It was completely blocked by the talisman. Although the talisman had completely collapsed, Yan Qingyi still borrowed the power of the talisman to rise into the air, but she did not fall from mid-air. A talisman appeared under her feet, carrying her like a bird. With a whoosh, she flew into the distance. For someone like her who did not have any Dharma treasures, to be able to borrow the power of talismans, it was an eye-opener for Tang Zheng. He could not help but be impressed. The heavenly Tao was indeed extraordinary. It actually allowed her to possess such a powerful mystique. "Don't let her escape," the Emperor of Heaven shouted. The Empyrean fairy immediately chased after her. "Somersault cloud!" Tang Zheng shouted, and the somersault cloud immediately flew to his feet. He rode the cloud and chased after Yan Qingyi. The 3 members of the Yan family were dumbfounded. They were as anxious as ants on a hot pan, but they looked at each other helplessly. Because they were martial artists, they did not know how to fly at all. To read the latest novel, please visit the website. Chapter 1489. Yan Qingyi was as fast as lightning, and the speed of the talisman was extremely fast. Under the influence of the heavenly Tao, she was like a shooting star that streaked across the sky. She was actually slightly faster than the Empyrean fairy. The Empyrean fairy was burning with anxiety. She heard a strong gust of wind from the side and a voice said, "Come up quickly. Let's chase them together." The Empyrean fairy jumped onto the somersault cloud without hesitation. She was very clear that the somersault cloud's speed was much faster than hers. If she did not want to fall behind too much, she could only travel together with Tang Zheng. Whoosh whoosh. One after the other, 2 rays of light streaked across the sky. The sound of the wind was biting cold, and both parties heard it. Yan Qingyi's heart was also in her mouth. Even my talisman is unable to shake off these 2 people. This is really inconceivable. Yan Qingyi thought to herself, but she did not give in. I am the successor of the heavenly Tao. How can I fall into their hands? Furthermore, if I can't even overcome this, what right do I have to preach to the world? She took a deep breath and overcame the fear in her heart. She was in high spirits again. The talisman transformed and completely covered her. Where did she go? On the somersault cloud, Tang Zheng and the Empyrean fairy opened their eyes wide at the same time and asked this question. Yan Qingyi disappeared into thin air. It must be the work of that talisman. The Emperor of Heaven's voice rang out. He returned to the porcelain bottle once again to avoid harming Yan Qingyi if he stayed in her body for too long. Tang Zheng's heart tightened and he blurted out, "Are talismans that powerful?" "Talismans are far more powerful than you think," the Emperor of Heaven said worriedly. Clearly, he was not speaking without thinking. Regarding the use of talismans, Ancestor Fuxi was the most knowledgeable. Back then he was the most proficient in talismans. It was just that no one inherited his legacy. Who would have thought that Yan Qingyi would have such luck? Several people were very clear that Yan Qingyi's talisman was not inherited from Fuxi, but was comprehended from the heavenly Tao. Fuxi's talisman divine art was also comprehended from the heavenly Tao. It was just that other people didn't have the opportunity and perception that he had. Tang Zheng and Yan Qingyi's expressions were extremely ugly, and their hearts became heavy. Although Yan Qingyi had fled in a sorry state, as long as she successfully escaped, it would be equivalent to their failure. In fact, Tang Zheng was also proficient in illusions, and invisibility was one of them. However, after he used his mystique, his eyes of fire and gold did not discover Yan Qingyi's whereabouts. Thus, he could only ask the Emperor of Heaven for help. "Do you have a way to track them?" The Emperor of Heaven was ashamed and said regretfully, "No, I don't know much about talismans. Especially since the other party's talisman was comprehended from the heavenly Tao. It is completely different from ordinary talismans, and is not that easy to see through." One sentence cut off Tang Zheng's thoughts. His heart was burning with anxiety, but there was nothing he could do. The Empyrean fairy was so angry that she stomped her feet and said unwillingly, "Then we can only give up like this?" Actually, the three of them were very clear that both parties were racing against time. After this short while, Yan Qingyi would definitely slip away and never be found again. Tang Zheng and the Emperor of Heaven both fell into silence. After a long time, the Emperor of Heaven said faintly, "Yaoer, don't worry. After I am reborn, I will definitely find her to settle this matter and seek justice for the Fu clan." The Empyrean fairy gradually calmed down. Recalling Yan Qingyi's words from before, she was still angry in her heart. However, she could not hold back her curiosity and asked the Emperor of Heaven for confirmation. "Then what she said about the Fu clan, is it true?" The Emperor of Heaven hesitated for a moment and said, "The ancestors of the Fu clan will not be tainted by others. Even if they really did that, they would definitely have other considerations. What kind of person is Ancestor Fuxi? The problems that he thinks about are not things that we can think of. Therefore, we have to believe in him unconditionally. This is what the descendants of the Fu clan should do." The Emperor of Heaven's impassioned speech moved the Empyrean fairy. She nodded her head heavily and said, "Father's words are true. Your daughter will remember them." The few of them returned to the Yan family. The three people from the Yan family were anxious to death. Seeing them return, they rushed over and asked impatiently, "Where's Qingyi? What did you do to her?" The Empyrean fairy snorted coldly, extremely displeased. Tang Zheng said calmly, "You don't have to worry too much. She has already escaped, and we can't do anything to her." Whoosh! The three of them heaved a sigh of relief at the same time, as if a heavy burden had been lifted from their shoulders. Yan Patian patted his chest and said, "You really scared this old thing to death." As soon as he finished speaking, he realized that his words seemed to be a little awkward. With a resentful expression, he raised his head to look at Tang Zheng, and his heart started to feel uneasy again. Yan Qingyi had escaped, but even if she could run away, she couldn't run away from the temple. The Yan family, who had a lot of businesses, was still here. Would they make a move on the Yan family? The three of them felt their hearts rise again. Tang Zheng had already seen some clues from the changes in their expressions, and said meaningfully, "You don't have to worry, I won't do anything to you. Every injustice has its perpetrator, every debt has its debtor. Now that I have a grudge with Yan Qingyi, I won't vent my anger on you guys. Moreover, my relationship with the Yan family is not shallow, so how could I make a move on you guys?" Yan Qingyi was Yan Qingyi, and the others were the others. Tang Zheng was very clear about this. Tang Zheng did not have the slightest complaint about the Yan clan's actions in the past. After all, even Ji Wuxiang's threats and promises did not rope them in. This was under the circumstances where they knew that Tang Zheng was dead, so it could be seen how precious this relationship was. If it wasn't for Yan Qingyi, the two sides definitely wouldn't have reached such an awkward state. When Yan Patian heard these words, his heart stirred and he said emotionally, "We also don't want to come to this. Actually, Qingyi has always been a child with her own opinions since she was young, and we can't interfere with the things that he has decided." Even though he said that, Tang Zheng still said earnestly, "You all heard her bold words. Do you think she will succeed? How could it be so easy to spread the Tao to the world? Moreover, was it possible for the entire world to revere a so-called heavenly Tao? It is impossible for the human heart to be completely unified." The three members of the Yan family fell into silence. Tang Zheng also did not stay for long. In order to avoid awkwardness between the two sides, he muttered to himself for a moment and said, "If there is anything in the future, if the Yan family needs any help, feel free to come find me." The three of them looked at him in surprise. They never thought that after this battle he would actually help the Yan family. Yan Potion's eyes were red, and he said emotionally, "Young Master Tang, I'm ashamed." Tang Zheng smiled faintly, and turned to leave the Yan family with the Empyrean fairy, leaving the three of them standing in the midst of the mess for a long time, looking at each other without saying a word. The Empyrean fairy was extremely unwilling, but she also had a pressing matter that she needed to do, and that was to help the Emperor of Heaven be reborn. Once the Emperor of Heaven was resurrected, his strength would be even stronger. The next time he met Yanqingyi, the two of them would join hands and would definitely not give her the chance to escape. Tang Zheng, ever since I was resurrected in the ancient tomb, I have never left you. But now that my father and daughter are reunited, and my father needs to return to the sun, I have to find a suitable body for him. The Empyrean fairy changed the topic, and actually bid farewell. Tang Zheng was startled for a moment. He stared straight at the Empyrean fairy, suddenly feeling a sense of reluctance and discomfort. After she was resurrected, she had almost always done things for him, and had never taken the initiative to ask to leave. This request made him feel somewhat at a loss, but he couldn't find a reason to refute it. Seeing him staring at him blankly, the Empyrean fairy asked, "Do you not agree?" Tang Zheng laughed bitterly. "How could I not agree? It's just that I'm not used to your departure." The Empyrean fairy said disapprovingly, "It's not like we're parting forever. We still have time to meet again." "Then, I wish you success." "Thank you. See you later." The Empyrean fairy waved his sleeves, not taking away a single cloud, incomparably confident and at ease. Tang Zheng looked at her back deeply for a while. Suddenly, it was as if a part of his heart had been taken away, leaving him empty. He took a deep breath, turned around and walked back home. "You clearly don't want to leave. So why don't you tell him?" The Emperor of Heaven's voice sounded in the Empyrean fairy's ears. The Empyrean fairy's heartstrings trembled, but she pretended to be calm and lightly said, "What do you mean I don't want to leave? Haha, you are my daughter. I raised you since you were young, so how could I not understand you? You can fool others, but you can't fool me," the Emperor of Heaven said confidently. The Empyrean fairy was silent, refusing to comment. The Emperor of Heaven then said, "Actually, this little brat is a celestial with the 9-yang saint body. His cultivation base is high, and he is indeed a rare talent. He is just barely worthy of you." "Father, why are you saying this?" The 9 Heavens mystic maiden, who had seen countless storms and waves and was decisive in killing, immediately turned as red as an apple when she heard her father bring up these matters of love of his own accord. "You're already grown up, so what's there to be embarrassed about? Look at how thick that little brat Tang Zheng's skin is. You should learn from him. After all these years, his skin is still so thin," the Emperor of Heaven sincerely said. "I'm a girl." In front of her father, the Empyrean fairy finally returned to her daughter's side. "What does a girl have? My daughter doesn't lose to a man in any way." The Emperor of Heaven paused for a moment, no longer pressing her. He took a roundabout route and meaningfully said, "That little brat has the 9-yang saint body. Next year he will be 20 years old, and it's almost the end of the year. Don't look at how he can still control his pure yang energy. Once it erupts, it won't be as easy to control as before." The Empyrean fairy had a similar experience. If it weren't for the heavenly bed, she would have already died, so she knew how serious this matter was. Her heart couldn't help but hang up. The Emperor of Heaven sensed his daughter's thoughts, but he pretended not to see and said, "Don't look at how his cultivation has increased by leaps and bounds. This is indeed a good thing, but sometimes it can be fatal. When the time comes, if he can't control his pure yang energy, then his little life won't be guaranteed." "Father, you're experienced and knowledgeable. Think of a way to save him." The Empyrean fairy almost didn't think and blurted out these words. "Why should I save him? That little brat doesn't respect me at all," the Emperor of Heaven unhappily said. "That's because you're not familiar with him. Actually, he's a very good person." The Empyrean fairy defended herself. "Actually, it's not like there's no way." The Emperor of Heaven changed the topic and mischievously smiled. "You marry him, and your yin and yang are in harmony. Your 9-yin saint body is the best way to save him." "Father, why did you come back to this?" The Empyrean fairy was greatly embarrassed. She coquettishly glared with her eyes wide open. Her face was as pink as peach blossoms. Even the sun in the sky paled in comparison to her. To read the latest novel, please visit the website. Chapter 1490. In the outskirts of the capital, Tang Zheng and Xiao Bai took advantage of the night to fly over. In the dead of the night, No one discovered the whereabouts of these two people. They deliberately chose this time to fool others. This time they were going to do a risky thing, which was to open a spatial door and go to the sky beyond heaven to investigate. Tang Zheng had already comprehended a part of the spatial laws, so he didn't have to rely on Xiaobai's divine sense to pass through like before. With Xiaobai's assistance, he believed that he could smoothly pass through to the sky beyond heaven. The two flew up into the sky. The sky was the place where the spatial restrictions were the weakest, so it was the best place to open a spatial door. This was also the reason why the demons came from the sky. The two looked at each other. Xiaobai nodded and said, "Master, let's begin." Xiaobai's comprehension of the spatial laws was not as good as Tang Zheng's, so he could only use his divine sense to pass through. Therefore, he also wanted to try to pass through with Tang Zheng's body. In this process, he would definitely gain something. Tang Zheng calmed himself down. His eyes were fixed on the bright stars in the sky. He was in the middle of the stars, as if he was a neighbor of the stars. He activated his divine ability, and a mysterious aura spread out from his hands. He waved his hands and the air between his hands began to fluctuate. It became more and more intense until it was like boiling water. Goyulu. Streams of air flowed out from the boiling point, and a black crack appeared in the middle. Tang Zheng's eyes lit up. He suppressed the excitement in his heart and continued to activate his skills. Finally, the crack became bigger and bigger. Finally, it formed a door big enough for two people to pass through. This was the spatial door. "Master, you're really amazing." Xiaobai looked at this scene without blinking. He understood something and praised from the bottom of his heart. "Let's go. I'll need you to take action later." Tang Zheng smiled faintly and said calmly. The two of them passed through the spatial door together. With a whoosh, the spatial door disappeared and the sky became calm again. Even if an outsider came here, they would definitely not know that someone had just passed through the spatial door. Xiaobai had a natural sense of familiarity with the sky beyond sky. Even though Tang Zheng's spiritual sense had reached the sky beyond sky before, it was incomparable to Xiaobai's innate sense of familiarity. Therefore, once he passed through the spatial door, he would need Xiaobai to lead the way and pass through the spatial turbulence to arrive at his destination accurately. Amidst the chaos, Xiaobai pointed in a direction and nodded at Tang Zheng. Tang Zheng understood and cast his divine ability again. A spatial door suddenly opened in front of them, and they hurriedly passed through it. Whoosh! The spatial door closed once again. They turned their heads at the same time, and saw that the boundless sky was completely silent. There were still faintly discernible stars hanging in the sky, as if the night had just receded and the day was coming. Moreover, there was a red sun in the sky. It was not a red sun. Tang Zheng immediately denied it. It was more like a moon that was about to sink into the horizon. "Is the moon in the sky beyond sky red?" Tang Zheng blurted out. Xiaobai glanced at it and said, "Blood moon. It's as red as blood. This is the moon in the sky beyond sky." When the scarlet lunar beasts absorb the essence of the moonlight, the moon will turn into a blood moon. Could it be related to this? Tang Zheng asked as if he understood. The scarlet lunar beasts rely on absorbing the power of the blood moon to become stronger step by step. This is the magical part of the scarlet lunar beasts. From the inherited memories of my people, I found out that a long time ago, the moon in the sky beyond sky was also like the moon in the human world. It was porcelain white. As the number of scarlet lunar beasts increased, they kept absorbing the essence of the moonlight. The moon remained in its blood-red state for a long time. In the end, the moon was completely dyed red, and it has remained in its blood-red state ever since. Listening to Xiaobai's tireless explanation, Tang Zheng was secretly shocked. It was not hard to imagine how powerful the scarlet lunar beasts were in the past. Furthermore, the scarlet lunar beasts were loyal to the royal family. How powerful must the royal family be? He suppressed the sigh in his heart and watched as the blood moon disappeared. A bright red sun rose from the horizon, bringing warmth to the world. In order to avoid being discovered, the two of them quickly descended from the sky. Previously, they had coincidentally encountered the natives of the sky beyond sky attacking Kingsaman. Kingsaman was at death's door. If they had not stepped in and scared off the enemy, Kingsaman would have been wiped out. No one would care about the survival of such a small sect that had long since declined. The place they transmigrated to this time was different from the previous time. There were no fire trees or ice trees. Instead, it was a barren land. Yes, this place was very barren. It was like a different world compared to the lush forest from before. Tang Zheng almost asked if he had transmigrated to the wrong world and came to another world. Xiaobai had inherited the royal family's memory, so he explained, "This is the barren land of the sky beyond sky. It's the most barren place in the sky beyond sky. No one lives here. In fact, no one is willing to set foot in this place." Tang Zheng suddenly realized that there was nothing in this barren land other than the fiery red stones. There was not even a single blade of grass. Moreover, the air was very dry and hot. It was even hotter than the dog days of June in the human world. Tang Zheng was already immune to both heat and cold. Naturally, he was not afraid. Let's go to the enemy's core then. Before they came, the two of them had already discussed the itinerary. It was best to find a way to infiltrate the enemy's core. That way, they would be able to obtain the most information. After all, most of the memories that Xiaobai had inherited were outdated. They could not provide much reference value. Since it was the barren land, there was no need to worry about being discovered. Therefore, the two of them rose into the air and flew at a low altitude. Whoosh! The sound of something breaking through the air suddenly came from below. The two of them were shocked at the same time. They did not need to look to know that someone had attacked them. Was this not the barren land, where there was no one? Why would someone attack them? Could it be that the current ruler did not even make a mistake in this barren land and even sent people to guard it? Their minds were full of thoughts. They could not figure out what was going on, but their nerves immediately tensed up. If the enemy really discovered their whereabouts, it would be a tough battle. "I'll do it, master." Xiaobai took the initiative to take on the role of a guard. He did not give Tang Zheng a chance to attack. With a wave of his hand, 2 balls of flames flew out from his palms. With 2 whooshes, they attacked from both sides in the direction of the sound of something breaking through the air. Boom! Amidst the loud sound, sparks flew in all directions. One of them was revealed. It was a heaven-grade magic treasure. It was a giant hammer. It was pitch black and shone with a luster. The giant hammer seemed to have suffered a lot. It swayed and wanted to escape. However, Xiaobai's eyes were sharp and his hands were fast. How could he let it escape? "Humph, you want to escape after sneak attacking us? Stay." With a wave of his hand, a ball of flame spurted out from his palm and turned into a giant hand of fire. It grabbed the giant hammer. No matter how it struggled, it could not break free from this hand of fire. For the latest novel to read, please visit Chapter 1491. Xiaobai's attack was a success. He was proud of himself and shouted, "Who are you? Why are you hiding? Why don't you show yourself? Let go of my treasure." An angry voice came from the wildlands below. A figure flew into the air. "Oh, the real deal is finally out," Xiaobai said. Tang Zheng's eyes narrowed. The opponent's strength was far beyond Tang Zheng's expectations. It was not because he was very strong, but because he was not strong. Aren't the natives of the outer skies very strong? This person is only in the Yuanying stage. That's a bit too low. And he doesn't look young. Most importantly, he's too ugly. This person was indeed very ugly. His face was full of holes, like the surface of the moon. He was not young, so he must have been cultivating for a long time. In the outer skies, it was not considered high to have cultivated for dozens of years. The other party came aggressively and said angrily, "You guys are really like ghosts. We've already retreated to the wildlands, but you guys still found us." Ha! Tang Zheng was stunned. He was shocked by the other party's words. The other party seemed to have mistaken them for someone else. Xiaobai was not stupid. He immediately understood the other party's meaning. He looked at Tang Zheng and whispered, "It seems a bit strange." Tang Zheng nodded. Of course he knew what was strange. "He doesn't look like your enemy. If he was not Xiaobai's enemy, then he was not a native of the outer skies. Other than that, there were only so-called righteous cultivators in the outer skies. This group of people who were struggling at death's door had unexpectedly fallen to the point of retreating to the wildlands. It could be seen how miserable their situation was. Seeing that Tang Zheng and Xiao Bai were whispering to each other and ignoring him, the other party became even angrier. He roared, "You guys have chased us for so many years. I'm tired of running. I'll fight it out with you." As soon as he finished speaking, he rushed over. The wind whistled as he crashed into the two of them. All you have is brute force," Xiao Bai said indifferently. He lightly struck out with his palm. Flames swam in the center of his palm, and hot waves of air surged out. Boom! The intruder tumbled and fell to the ground at a high speed. "Come back." Tang Zheng finally made his move. The black hole in his palm flickered, and the man was immediately sucked in. He flew back and landed in Tang Zheng's palm. "Let me go, quickly let me go." That person kept struggling, but it was all in vain. "If I let you go, do you want to have a taste of his flames?" Tang Zheng asked jokingly. That person's body stiffened and his expression became unnatural, but he still raised his neck and stubbornly said, "Do you think I'm afraid? Since you're not afraid, why don't you have a taste?" Xiao Bai immediately called out. The flame in his palm seemed to be about to set his hair on fire. "Stop, stop, stop." The other party finally showed fear. His face was pale as he bit his lips and said, "A warrior can be killed, but not humiliated. Just kill me." "Yo, you're a tough guy. Humph, you natives of the sky beyond heaven have killed so many of my compatriots. You don't care about one more life." Seeing that he was facing death with equanimity, he had some backbone, which made him look at him in a new light. Just looking at his appearance at such a close distance, most people would probably vomit last night's meal. His facial features were squeezed together, and there was no highlight at all. A person would always have something to shine about him, but his appearance really made people unable to find a single shining point. "You actually don't dislike me?" Seeing that Tang Zheng was staring at him without blinking, the other party seemed to be very surprised. This was because he had received too many disdainful looks in the past. "What's there to dislike?" Tang Zheng asked in return. Am I not ugly?" the other party asked guiltily. "Is being disliked because you're ugly? Appearance is given to you by your parents. You can't choose, so why would you dislike it?" Tang Zheng said indifferently. But these words hit the softest part of the other party's heart. His eyes became bright red, and he said, "If you weren't a native of the sky beyond heaven, we could definitely be friends." Tang Zheng laughed loudly, and asked in return, "Who said I was a native of the sky beyond heaven?" "You're not a native of the sky beyond heaven? Then who else could you be? This is the sky beyond heaven? Are there others?" the other party asked in confusion. "He's a demon." A dignified voice came from afar, and a huge movement came from the ground. Many people came out from underground, like ants crawling out of their nest. They stared at Tang Zheng and Xiao Bai like tigers eyeing their prey. "Wild dog, you've been fooled by him. He's a demon, not a native of the sky beyond heaven." The voice sounded again. Tang Zheng's eyes narrowed, and he immediately locked onto the first person in the crowd, Baimei Daoist. He was wearing a navy blue robe, and his aura was majestic. No one dared to underestimate him. "So you're called Wild Dog. This name is really unique." Tang Zheng let go of his hand. Wild Dog hurriedly took a few steps back, but immediately stopped, realizing that this was unnecessary. In front of Tang Zheng, Wild Dog was like a 3-year-old child, and there was no room for resistance. Wild Dog looked at Tang Zheng with eyes full of hatred, and it burned even more fiercely than before. He fiercely spat and said, "So you're a demon. You come from the same world, but you kill each other and help the evildoers. You demons are even more annoying than the natives of the sky beyond heaven." TSK interesting. Tang Zheng looked at the other party with interest. "Why do you think I'm a demon?" Baimei Daoist led many people to fly up, and said from afar, "Do you think you can hide it from my eyes? Your sky-swallowing technique, others can't recognize it, but how can I not?" Tang Zheng suddenly understood, saying, "So it's because of the sky-swallowing technique. Now you won't deny it, right?" Baimei Daoist said proudly. "Did I admit it? It's true that this is the sky-swallowing technique, But who said that the one who uses the sky-swallowing technique is a demon? Tang Zheng asked. If you're not a demon, how can you use a demon's divine ability? Wild Dog asked first. If I were a demon, I would have killed you long ago. Why would I say so much to you? Tang Zheng said meaningfully. It seems that you're all righteous people who have been banished here. The demon race has left the sky beyond heaven, and now you're the only ones left. I didn't expect that your living environment would be so bad, that you have no choice but to hide in this wilderness. Tang Zheng sighed faintly, truly shocked by the current situation. The situation of the righteous path was worse than he had expected. Wild Dog spoke without thinking, and said angrily, I don't know what's wrong with those natives, but they've been chasing after us with no regard for their own lives. That's why we have no choice but to hide here. All of this is because of Kingsaman. Baimei Daoist said unhappily. Everyone else agreed. That's right, if Kingsaman hadn't angered the natives, they wouldn't have started such a crazy chase. Obviously, most people were pointing the finger at Kingsaman. Kingsaman? Tang Zheng and Xiao Bai looked at each other, and both of them realized this key piece of information. The natives of the sky beyond heaven had started chasing after the righteous path, because of the Kingsaman incident. This meant that Tang Zheng and Xiao Bai had saved Kingsaman, and that was why they had such a big reaction. That day, Tang Zheng had exposed his identity as a member of the royal family of Xiao Bai, and that was how he had managed to scare off so many enemies with his divine sense. Who would have thought that this would cause repercussions? They must have wanted to get to the bottom of this, and that was why they attacked the righteous path. Or perhaps, they thought that the righteous path was related to the royal family. Suddenly, the two of them looked at the righteous path with much gentler eyes. After all, they were the ones who had caused this disaster. What happened to Kingsaman? Tang Zheng asked with concern. You know about Kingsaman too? Baimei Daoist looked at the two of them suspiciously and asked. I'm related to one of the seniors in their sect. Kingsaman has been colluding with the demons for a long time. Baimei Daoist raised his voice and roared angrily. Nonsense. Tang Zheng's expression darkened. He didn't want to bring Kingsaman another disaster because of him. If that happened, Tian Chanzi wouldn't let him off so easily. I've already said that I'm not a demon. If I were a demon, do you think you'd still be standing here? Tang Zheng asked in a low voice. Baimei Daoist's expression became very unnatural. He couldn't see through Tang Zheng's cultivation level, so he reprimanded him sternly. You talk big. Tang Zheng ignored his deliberately mystifying behavior and said straightforwardly. Where are the people from Kingsaman? Take me to them. Who do you think you are? You think you're going to meet them just because you say so? Someone said disdainfully. Tang Zheng frowned and said, You've been hunted down by the natives of Beyond Avalon until you're in such a sorry state. All you can do is hide here and struggle at death's door. I really don't know where you get your confidence from. Tang Zheng didn't give them any face, mainly because these people's attitudes were too bad. They didn't show any kindness at all. His words hit their sore spot. Many of them stomped their feet and cursed. Where did you come from, kid? Who do you think you are? You're born to a mother but raised by no mother. Born to a mother but raised by no mother. Tang Zheng's sore spot was also hit. Because of his background, this was especially sensitive. Even though he now knew who his parents were, it didn't change much. His eyes turned red in an instant as he locked onto the person in the crowd who was talking nonstop. That person had greasy hair and a powdered face, but he had some cultivation level. Despite his young age, he was already at the 6th level of the divine transformation realm. He could be considered an expert among this group of people. Shut up. Tang Zheng glared fiercely at him and roared at him. His roar was like a clap of thunder, causing everyone's ears to ring. Tang Zheng stretched out his right hand, and a black hole immediately appeared in his palm. He locked onto that person from afar. With a single thought, that person flew towards him without any room for resistance. Stop. Baimei Daoist yelled. With a whoosh, the horsetail whisk in his hand rose up. As if it had a life of its own. It stood between the two of them. The horsetail whisk swelled up like tentacles as it pierced towards Tang Zheng with a whooshing sound. You dare to hurt my master? You're courting death. Xiaobai took on the responsibility of protecting his master, and grabbed the horsetail whisk with his flaming hand. Whoosh! A dazzling white light bloomed from the horsetail whisk. To read the latest novel, please visit the website. Chapter 1492. The white light in the horsetail whisk was particularly dazzling, colliding with the bright red flames. Xiaobai subconsciously took a step back, and Baimei Daoist did not have it easy either, actually taking 2 steps back. Omega 81 Delta Chinese net. This seemingly casual strike was enough to determine the winner. Everyone was stunned, incredulous. They looked left at Baimei Daoist, right at Xiaobai, speechless for a long time. Taking advantage of this gap, the young man had already fallen into Tang Zheng's hands without any suspense. His face was pale, and he waved his hands and feet shouting, "What are you doing?" He was so shocked that he had fallen into Tang Zheng's hands that he broke out in a cold sweat. Seeing this scene, the others finally reacted. Baimei Daoist's reaction was the biggest. He immediately rushed forward shouting, "Put him down, or I'll bury you in this wilderness." Tang Zheng's lips curled into a playful smile, saying, "Aren't you afraid of biting your tongue with such big words? You care so much about him. Who is he to you?" Baimei Daoist's body stiffened and he stammered, "He's not anyone to me." Wild Dog tilted his head, and immediately corrected, "Baimei Daoist, he's clearly your son. How is he not anyone to you?" Baimei Daoist's face turned cold, and he glared fiercely at Wild Dog, reprimanding, "Wild Dog, if you don't speak, no one will think you're mute." Tang Zheng immediately understood, and laughed loudly. "So that's how it is, they're father and son. No wonder you're so worried about him." "Humph, it's the father's fault if the son doesn't teach him. Did he learn this habit of spouting shit from you?" Because the other party had spoken rudely, Tang Zheng did not say anything good to him. "You." Baimei Daoist gritted his teeth, speechless for a moment. "You dare to insult my father? Do you know who he is? He is the alliance leader of the righteous faction. With a single order, all the righteous faction members will chop you into minced meat." The young man fell into Tang Zheng's palm, but he was not content. He continued to shout arrogantly. Tang Zheng made a sound of surprise as he sized up Baimei Daoist. His gaze became serious as he said, "Righteous alliance leader. You can actually become an alliance leader with this little bit of cultivation?" He could already see that Baimei Daoist was at the second stage of the Mahayana stage, which was indeed not low, but for the leader of the Righteous Alliance to have such a low cultivation base, it was really quite low. But on second thought he felt relieved. The living space of the righteous path was so miserable. They were chased by the natives of the realm beyond heaven, and could only hide in this desolate and uninhabited land. This showed that their strength was indeed not strong. This bleak situation made his heart sink. Back then, when the devil race returned, most of their strength was not high. The Mahayana realm was already considered a top expert, not much different from the righteous path. Scared now? Then obediently put me down and beg for my forgiveness. Then I can spare your life. Seeing Tang Zheng's reaction, the young man felt refreshed. Baimei Daoist raised his head, seeming to be quite proud of his identity. "Where do you get your confidence from?" Xiaobai did not like the other side and slapped the young man's face, saying disdainfully, "You dare to hit me?" The young man was stunned. He did not expect that Tang Zheng's lackey would dare to hit him. After all, Xiaobai had always called Tang Zheng master. The others had also heard it and naturally did not put him in their eyes. Xiaobai was a member of the imperial family, so how could he be afraid of a young man? He curled his lips and slapped him again. The other side of the young man's face turned red again. The young man was completely stunned. Baimei Daoist's cheeks were red, as if the 2 slaps were on his face. He shouted sternly, "Stop! Who are you people? How dare you come here and behave so atrociously?" Baimei Daoist had already begun to suspect the identity of the 2 people. Tang Zheng kept denying that he was a demon, but Baimei Daoist actually believed him a little. Because, even if it was a demon, no one would dare to be so arrogant in front of him and make him lose face. Then the identity of these 2 people was particularly suspicious. Tang Zheng did not immediately reveal his identity. If the situation was different, perhaps he would have just said that he was from his hometown. But Bai Mei Daoist's attitude made him dispel this idea and decided to observe more. After all, these people had been exiled for hundreds of years and must have changed a lot. Tang Zheng would not be so naive as to tell all his information to the other side. One must always be on guard against others. As for our identity, you will naturally know in the future. Tang Zheng deliberately kept them in suspense. If you don't say, then it means that there is a problem. Bai Mei Daoist said coldly. Tang Zheng frowned slightly. Bai Mei Daoist's attitude made him unhappy, but he did not want to waste his breath on the other side. He said, "Call out the people from Kingsaman. I have something to discuss with them." Kingsaman. They were involved again. Bai Mei Daoist reprimanded. "If you want to see the people from Kingsaman, you will have to get past us first." "Fine, if that's the case, then let me see what you are capable of." Tang Zheng did not say anything else. He swung his arm and threw the hostages in his hands away. The young man hurriedly ran behind Bai Mei Daoist and bared his teeth at Tang Zheng. His eyes were full of hatred. Bai Mei Daoist immediately gave a look to his left and right. The crowd behind him immediately parted like the tide. Bai Mei Daoist, are you going to set up the Big Dipper array again? Haha, I am so lucky. This is going to be an eye-opener for me." Wild Dog shouted excitedly. He widened his eyes and stared at the group's every move. "Kid, be careful. This array is very dangerous. Be careful. You might lose your life." Wild Dog did not forget to remind Tang Zheng. Bai Mei Daoist glared at Wild Dog. He wanted to chop him into pieces. The Big Dipper array? Tang Zheng looked at the group with interest. He did not stop them. He had seen the power of Tian Qi, so he was not afraid of ordinary formations. It seemed that the Heavenly Dipper array was not simple, so he was interested in looking at it and studying it. Everyone was already in formation. Bai Mei Daoist was in the center. He stood proudly, exuding an unapproachable aura. The young man stood in the distance, glancing at Tang Zheng proudly. He gritted his teeth and said, "Kid, you are dead for daring to slap me. Humph, I will chop you into pieces." Although the righteous faction had declined, but because he was the son of the alliance leader, his status was noble. Countless people flattered him, and he had never suffered such humiliation. "Master, let me do it." Xiao Bai volunteered. Tang Zheng waved his hand and stepped forward. "I will test their Big Dipper array." He stepped forward. A ball of light blossomed under his feet. He walked in the air, dazzling rays of light blossoming under his feet. If one looked carefully, they would find that these rays of light looked like lotus flowers. Lotus flowers blooming with every step. This was the ability of the Ksitigarbha Sutra. Although Tang Zheng did not deliberately use it, the Ksitigarbha Sutra had integrated into his words and actions. That was why the lotus flowers appeared without a trace. The Big Dipper array had finished accumulating power. Everyone was chanting and raising their hands. Specks of light rose from their palms and converged in the air. So. The rays of light were like meteors, shooting in one direction. Wild Dog was frightened. He had only heard of the terrifying power of the Big Dipper array. Now that he had seen it with his own eyes, his life was not in vain. One had to know that the reason why Bai Mei Daoist could sit on the throne of the righteous faction leader was because of this array. The righteous faction was weak. Even if they gathered everyone's strength, it would be very difficult to resist the pursuit of the natives of the sky beyond sky. But the Big Dipper array improved this problem. The Big Dipper array could gather everyone's strength and pour it into one person, causing that person's strength to rise to the peak. Bai Mei Daoist stood in the center of the array. Rays of light shot towards him from all directions. He was like the focus of a magnifying glass, receiving light and energy from all directions. Boom! A loud sound rang out as all of the light entered White Brow's Daoist's body. He raised his head and roared towards the sky. His beard and eyebrows were all white. At this moment, not only were his eyebrows white, but his beard and head were also white. His appearance became crazed, and even a bit ferocious. His whole body exuded a terrifying aura that swept towards Tang Zheng. "Master!" Xiao Bai called out in a low voice. Tang Zheng waved his hand slightly, indicating that he was fine. He raised the hidden mystic sword. Wung! The sword hummed loudly, and a sharp sword light shot out. Pooh! With a loud sound, that earth-shattering aura was completely shattered by this sword. It had no effect at all. Tang Zheng's casual sword strike did not frighten his opponent. After all, this was just a probing attack. The real show was yet to come. Bai Mei Daoist had finished accumulating power. He glared fiercely at Tang Zheng. With a flick of his horsetail whisk, the white horsetail whisk flew up and floated in the air, chasing the wind and moon. Bai Mei Daoist roared, and a white light shot out from the horsetail whisk. Its speed was extremely fast, as if it was chasing the wind and moon. In an instant, it was in front of Tang Zheng. Its sharpness was not inferior to the sword chi at all. Tang Zheng shook his wrist and performed the Taiji two-form swordplay. He had just learned a few new moves, so he quickly performed them to test his actual combat ability. A yin-yang fish appeared in the sky. It was formed by the sword chi. One was yin and the other was yang. Two black and white swords shot out from the fish's eyes. They intertwined and fell from the sky. Every time the two swords fell a certain distance, the sword chi became sharper. When it met the white light of the horsetail whisk, it was extremely sharp, as if it could tear the sky apart. Pooh! The sword light hit the white light, and the white light was split into two. The remaining white light seemed to have met its nemesis and hurriedly retreated back into the horsetail whisk. Looking carefully, only half of the whisk's whisk was left. It turned out that the white light was shot out after the whisk's whisk grew longer. Subduing the dragon and tiger. Bai Mei Daoist suffered a loss, but he did not give up. With a roar, he performed a new move. He pointed his finger at the horsetail whisk, and a drop of blood flew into the horsetail whisk, dyeing the white horsetail whisk red. The horsetail whisk immediately had a trace of bloody aura, and became extremely dangerous. Chapter 1493. Subduing the Dragon and Tiger. The blood-red palms collided with the black shoulders, and the air seemed to freeze. Both sides were still, but this scene did not last for long. With a poochie sound, the two swords pierced through the blood-red palms and flew toward White Eyebrows Daoist. The blood-red palm collapsed and turned into streaks of light. The horsetail whisk in front of the White Eyebrows Daoist had changed greatly. Half of the whisk was broken, and it no longer had the power it had before. White Eyebrows Taoist was stunned, but when he heard the sound of something breaking through the air, he immediately realized the danger. He came to his senses, puffed up his cheeks and shouted, "Wipe out the universe!" The horsetail whisk flew back into his hand. I held it upside down and stabbed it fiercely in front of me. Although it was in the air, it seemed to be stuck in a very solid rock. The horsetail whisk stood there steadily. Boom! A huge sound rang out from where it was stabbed, and a shockwave spread out in all directions. It was as if the universe had been turned upside down. Interesting. Tang Zheng's pupils constricted as he saw through the clues. This was the White Brow Daoist's desperate attack, so his strength was naturally not to be underestimated. The Big Dipper array gathered the power of many people and poured it into Bai Mei Daoist's body. Although his cultivation did not increase, his combat power increased exponentially. In a short time, his combat power soared to 4th grade Great Ascension stage. That's right, Tang Zheng was at the 4th stage of the Great Ascension stage, so he had a very accurate understanding of the White Brow Daoist's strength. However, Tang Zheng had a divine weapon like the Hidden Profound Sword. How could he be afraid of Bai Mei Daoist? He clenched the Hidden Profound Sword and simply shouted, "Slash!" The hidden sword of Xian slashed forward, and the yin-yang fish in the air began to change. They fell from the sky and became smaller and smaller. In the end, they gathered on the hidden sword of Xian. After one slash, the yin-yang fish and the sword light became one. When the black and white swords encountered the erasing heaven and earth move, they had already been reduced to ashes. Tang Zheng's extremely proficient sword followed closely behind and flew in front of Daoist's White Eyebrows. Rumble! It was a shocking blow. Endless light shot out from the point of explosion. In an instant, it was as if a sun had appeared in the sky above the wildlands. The light was so dazzling that people could not open their eyes. After a long time, the smoke dissipated and everything returned to normal. Everyone's ears ringing. Tang Zheng and Xiao Bai also took a few steps back, but nothing happened to them. On the other hand, the Big Dipper array was completely shattered and their opponents were scattered in the air. Many people even fell to the ground like cannonballs, smashing a big hole in the hard rock. Baimei Daoist and his father were one of them. They fell to the ground. Baimei Daoist was embedded in the rock, looking very awkward. He coughed violently, blood hanging from the corner of his mouth. He climbed up shakily from the rock and looked at the two people in the sky. He was so shocked that his soul almost left his body. He was sure that they were not demons. The demons did not have such powerful people. Then who could they be? The natives of the Beyond Sky? No. The natives of the Beyond Sky had always used their strength to crush others. They killed decisively. Why would they say more than a few words to them? Seeing that everyone was looking at him, he wanted to find a hole to hide in. But in the end he resisted the impulse. With a red face, he gritted his teeth and silently looked for a solution. Fighting was not the best choice. This was a lesson learned in blood. What else could he do? He had to pretend to be obedient and figure out the other party's background first. Tang Zheng and Xiao Bai looked at each other. Xiao Bai gave a thumbs up and praised, "Master, you're so powerful." Tang Zheng smiled faintly and landed on the ground with Xiao Bai. No one dared to come forward. When they saw him approaching, they retreated in all directions, not daring to confront him. Tang Zheng touched his nose and smiled in his heart. He had shown his power in this battle. It was time to talk properly. "Do you still want to fight?" Tang Zheng stared at Baimei Daoist and asked. Baimei Daoist gritted his teeth. For a moment he did not know how to answer. But Wild Dog appeared out of nowhere again. With an eye-opening look he clicked his tongue and praised. "How would he dare to fight? I don't think anyone dares to fight with you." These words made Baimei Daoist want to cut him into pieces. Wild Dog did not know. He looked at Tang Zheng with admiration and asked, "How did you cultivate? How could you be so powerful? How many years have you cultivated?" A cultivator's age could not be judged by his appearance. When he cultivated to a certain level, he could change his appearance and stay young forever. After the battle just now, many people subconsciously thought that Tang Zheng must have cultivated for many years. Otherwise he could not be so powerful. 2 years. Tang Zheng stretched out his fingers and gestured. 2 years. Wild Dog hesitated for a moment. He stared at Tang Zheng's 2 fingers as if he had seen a ghost. He thought he had heard wrong. Come on, even if he had said 20 years he would not be so shocked. But Tang Zheng said 2 years. Wild Dog hurriedly turned his head to look at the others, as if wondering if he was hallucinating and had misheard. But he had seen the answer from the others' reactions. This man really said 2 years. What could he do in 2 years? Many people did not even reach the threshold, but he had become so powerful. Was he lying? But for a group of defeated people, it seemed that there was no need to lie. White Eyebrows Daoist swallowed his saliva, which was mixed with blood, and asked in bewilderment, "What are you going to do?" I said, "Let me see the people of Kingsman." Tang Zheng calmly said, completely without any murderous aura. With a hurried glance, one would think that he was a harmless neighborhood boy. People under the eaves had to bow their heads. Baimei Daoist wanted to refuse, but he could not say it. He could only give his son a look and ordered, "Go and call the people of Kingsman." Well, his son hesitated. "What are you waiting for? I told you to go." Baimei Daoist lost his temper and roared. His son didn't dare to hesitate any longer. Like a wisp of smoke he drilled into a cave. Tang Zheng's gaze slightly shifted as he stared at the cave. He thought to himself that there was actually a completely different world below. These people of the good faction were indeed wronged. They were forced to hide in caves. The Wild Dog could no longer take his eyes off Tang Zheng. He hesitated for a moment, but in the end he could not hold back his curiosity. He leaned over and asked, "Hey, how did you cultivate? Can you tell me a little trick? I have practiced for most of my life, and only reached the Yuanying state. I am far from you." Tang Zheng had a good impression of Wild Dog. He even had a better impression of him than Baimei Daoist and his son. Then he carefully observed Wild Dog. He couldn't help but be shocked. Although this Wild Dog was ugly, its cultivation talent was definitely not bad. It was even better than most people, and even better than the White Eyebrows Taoist. "Why are you only at the Yuanying state?" Tang Zheng asked. Wild Dog blushed and said angrily, "I am just guessing. No sect is willing to take in people like me. His words could not hide his low mood, and even a little self-abasement. To read the latest novel, please visit the website. Chapter 1494. Wild Dog's cheeks were red and he was obviously embarrassed, which made him look even uglier. Tang Zheng, on the other hand, ignored his ugliness and was shocked by his words and cultivation. Wild Dog did not have a master to guide him. He had reached the realm of yuanying by himself. This was not something that ordinary people could do. If Tang Zheng did not have Tian Chanzi's guidance and the ancient Clear Heaven Scroll, it was almost impossible for him to advance by leaps and bounds. Although Wild Dog did not reach Tang Zheng's cultivation, his strength was not bad. It could be seen that his talent was good and he could definitely beat many people. In Tang Zheng's eyes, Wild Dog's talent was better than Baimei Daoist. If he was given the same cultivation conditions, Wild Dog's cultivation would definitely be higher than Baimei Daoist. Seeing Tang Zheng's silence, Wild Dog thought that he was being looked down upon. However, he was already used to this and did not find it strange. Still, he clenched his teeth and said, "I believe that one day, I will definitely not lose to others." Tang Zheng's eyes lit up, and he stared at him. He said in a deep voice, "I believe in you." What? The Wild Dog raised its head and stared at Tang Zheng with its large, suspicious eyes, wondering if it was hearing things. "You believe in me?" he asked doubtfully. Tang Zheng nodded. "Yes, I believe that you will not lose to others and make those who once looked down on you feel ashamed." This tone was very sincere and sincere, not like ridicule, which made Wild Dog stunned for a moment. Since he was a child, he had never heard other people's affirmation and performance, but a stranger had expressed such great affirmation to him. He was at a loss and thought that he was dreaming. He was sure that Tang Zheng was not lying to him, but really expressing his inner opinion. Why do you believe in me?" Wild Dog asked puzzledly. Tang Zheng pointed to the others and said, "You are more talented than them and you work so hard. I have no reason not to believe this." Ha ha ha. Mocking laughter rang out from the crowd, and it was especially ear-piercing. When Tang Zheng looked at the crowd, the laughter stopped abruptly. Obviously, these people thought that Tang Zheng's words were a fantasy. Baimei Daoist frowned and stared at Wild Dog deeply, as if trying to figure out whether he was real or not. However, he did not have Tang Zheng's vision, so he did not see any clues. In his eyes, the Wild Dog was no different from a normal dog. "Thank you." Wild Dog looked at Tang Zheng excitedly, his emotions fluctuating like a tidal wave that never stopped rolling. Dong dong dong. A burst of hurried footsteps disrupted this scene. Under the lead of that young man, the distinct void sex people walked over. The mood of the distinct void sex people was very gloomy. They hung their heads dejectedly like stray dogs. The truth was indeed so. They had already lost their homes and caused other righteous path cultivators to leave their homes and become homeless. In the eyes of others, the people of Kingsaman were scourges. They wanted to stay as far away as possible. Tang Zheng looked up. He did not have a deep impression of the people of Kingsaman after they left in a hurry last time. However, he remembered a few faces. He recognized a few familiar faces in the crowd. These people were indeed from Kingsaman. The people of Kingsaman looked at the scene in confusion. They had also seen the battle in the sky and were deeply shocked. In their eyes, Baimei Daoist was already an invincible figure. They did not expect that an outsider could defeat Baimei Daoist so easily. Everyone saw this scene. Baimei Daoist's strength was questioned like never before. The people of Kingsaman did not expect that these people were here for them. When they heard the order to come here, they were all stunned. In the end, a few people of high status were chosen, and led by the sect master. The people of Kingsaman looked at Tang Zheng and Xiaobai suspiciously. They tried hard to recall, but in the end, they were sure that they had not seen these two people anywhere. But why were these two people looking for them? Baimei Daoist waved at the people of Kingsaman and said, "Taik Suzy, these two people are here for Kingsaman. Could it be that Taik Suzy is acquainted with some powerful cultivators? You're really good at hiding." Even an idiot could tell that these words were not friendly. Tang Zheng frowned but did not say anything. Instead, he looked at the people who had come. His gaze fell on Taiksuzi first. Back when they were fighting against the natives of the outer world, he was the strongest fighter. It was obvious that he was the leader of this group. He was right. Although Kingsuman had been on the decline for a long time, it was still a sect and naturally had its own group of people. This person's name was Taiksuzi. He was the current sect master of Kingsuman. Taiksuzi was shocked when he heard Baimei Daoist's words. He was furious, but he did not dare to show it. He said angrily, "You're exaggerating, sect master. I don't know these people, and I don't know why they came to Kingsuman. You don't know them, but they lied to you and came to you. Who do you think will believe that?" Baimei Daoist said sarcastically, "Yes, we don't believe it." Many people echoed. It was obvious that they were on the same side as Baimei Daoist. Taishuzi's expression immediately became very unsightly. He looked left and right, not knowing what to do. He had long since known that the distinct void sect was in a very difficult situation. During this period of time, he had been very cautious, keeping his tail between his legs. However, he hadn't expected that these people still wouldn't let him go and would make things difficult for him at every turn. After all, Kingsuman was Tian Chanzi's sect. It was also Feng Shishir's sect. He would not stand by and watch Kingsuman suffer. He took a step forward and walked in front of Taiksuzi. He said, "Everyone from Kingsuman, don't worry. I'm not a bad person. I'm a close friend of a senior from Kingsuman. That's why I'm here to look for you." A close friend of a senior from our sect? Taiksuzi and the others were shocked. They were too familiar with this story. They would never forget it even if they were to die. Moreover, this voice was too familiar. Coupled with these words, they immediately recalled the incident that had happened not long ago. A mysterious voice had scared off the natives of the realm beyond heaven, allowing the final flame of the distinct void sect to survive. They would never forget this kindness. This matter was classified as a secret by the distinct void sect, and was not leaked to the outside world. Thus no one knew the inside story. However, when they saw Taiksuzi and the others' expressions change, the others immediately noticed something was wrong. Their eyes lit up, and they stared at both sides without blinking. "Senior, is that you?" Taiksuzi gulped and asked suspiciously. He chose to address them as senior, after careful consideration. Since Tangzheng was a close friend of a senior from Kingsuman, it was natural for him to address them as senior. They would not look down on Tangzheng just because of his young appearance. Moreover, they were indebted to him for saving their lives. They would address him as senior, from the bottom of their hearts. To read the latest novel, please visit the website. Chapter 1495. The word senior confused the others. After all, Taishuzi was a sect master. Why would he call a stranger senior for no reason? Baimei Daoist's eyes darkened. No one knew what he was thinking. Tangzheng saw the urgency in Taiksuzi's eyes, and understood the meaning behind his words. It was obvious that Taiksuzi recognized him as the person who saved Kingsuman. He smiled faintly and said calmly, "It's me." "It's really you." Taiksuzi was so surprised that he almost screamed. His voice rose a few decibels as he stared at him, unwilling to look away. Back then, he had only heard his voice. From now on, Taiksuzi would remember this face. Everyone in Kingsuman would remember this face. This was their savior. Not only Taiksuzi, but the other Kingsuman people also looked at Tangzheng with eager eyes. The others were stunned. They wondered why the Kingsuman people were all bewitched. "Senior, thank you for saving us last time." Taiksuzi thanked him sincerely. Tangzheng waved his hand. "It was nothing. Besides, we go way back." "What? Taiksuzi, you're saying that he was the one who saved you last time when you were besieged?" Baimei Daoist raised his eyebrows. He immediately grasped the main point. Kingsuman was no stranger to the incident where Kingsuman was almost annihilated. Moreover, it was rumored that a mysterious person had saved Kingsuman. It was precisely because of this that the natives of Beyond Avalon hated the righteous path, and started hunting them down with unprecedented intensity. Moreover, it was rumored that the expert who saved Kingsuman had always been the target of the natives of Beyond Avalon. The righteous path was just an innocent bystander. That was all that was known to the outside world, but no further details were known. This was Kingsaman's secret. After hearing Bai Mei Daoist's question, Taixuzi hesitated and glanced at Tang Zheng, not knowing how to answer Bai Mei Daoist. He secretly blamed himself for being so agitated and blurting out these things in a moment of desperation. Bai Mei Daoist looked at Taixuzi's attitude and became furious. Taixuzi, I can't order you to do anything, right? Don't forget, I'm the leader of the Righteous Alliance. Could it be that you're scheming something that you don't want your fellow Taoists to know about? This time, everyone has suffered an unexpected calamity because of you. You have to make it clear. Don't think you can get away with it. Bai Mei Daoist turned hostile and aggressive. The others also acted as if they had eaten gunpowder. They angrily surrounded the few of them, and looked like they wouldn't give up. Taixuzi was apprehensive, but he didn't back down. He mustered up his courage and said, Alliance leader, how could I be scheming something? This accusation is too big. Kingsaman can't bear it. Bai Mei Daoist gritted his teeth and said, Are you saying that I'm framing you? Everyone is here. Everyone can be the judge. Which one of us hasn't been harmed by you, Kingsaman? Yet you're acting all mysterious and mystifying. Seeing Kingsaman being mocked like this, Tang Zheng couldn't sit idly by. His face darkened and said, Bai Mei Daoist, I was the one who saved Kingsaman. So what? So what? That means the rumors are true. The natives of Sky Beyond Sky have been chasing you. They couldn't find you, so they targeted us. That's why we were forced to escape to this place where even birds don't shit. Bai Mei Daoist said sarcastically. Tang Zheng sneered and said jokingly, Aren't you the self-proclaimed leader of the Righteous Alliance? Why are you running? Could it be that running away was the only way out? I think if you continue to run like this, all the souls of the Righteous Alliance will be chased away by you. Tang Zheng glanced around. The Righteous Alliance was indeed filled with a declining aura. They didn't have the spirit that a strong cultivator should have. Bai Mei Daoist was ridiculed. He was furious and scolded. Who do you think you are? How dare you speak to me like this? Your origins are unknown and you've implicated us. This debt, we should settle it with you. Tang Zheng clapped his hands and said, Then you're welcome to settle it with me. After experiencing the battle just now, he already had a rough understanding of the Righteous Alliance's strength. Naturally, he was fearless. Just one sentence was enough to stop Bai Mei Daoist. He didn't have any leeway to resist. He stood there in a daze. He couldn't advance or retreat. He was in a dilemma. The others looked at Bai Mei Daoist. Seeing that he didn't react, they couldn't help but sigh. This was the alliance leader that they had chosen. In the end, he couldn't move forward. It really made them sigh. Bai Mei Daoist gritted his teeth so hard that they almost broke. But he still didn't dare to move. Because he knew that he wasn't Tang Zheng's opponent. Even the Big Dipper array couldn't defeat Tang Zheng. What else could he do? Since you don't dare to make a move, then don't blabber. Xiao Bai snorted disdainfully. Master, you can continue speaking. If anyone dares to blabber, I'll shut them up. Xiao Bai's aura was very sharp. No one dared to ignore him. Not to mention, the moves that Xiao Bai had revealed earlier made it clear that he was an expert. No one dared to go against him. Just the two of them were able to intimidate over 100 people. It could be seen that the Righteous Alliance had suffered a terrible blow. They didn't even have the slightest bit of confidence. Tang Zheng also sighed inwardly. In the past, he still had great hopes for the Righteous Alliance. But now he realized that these were all unrealistic fantasies. The Righteous Alliance's boldness was even inferior to the demon race. The demon race's aggressiveness was far greater than the Righteous Alliance's. Moreover, they would find their own way to break out of the encirclement and return to the sky beyond heaven. But the Righteous Alliance had always been trapped in the sky beyond heaven. In fact, the Righteous Alliance wasn't unified internally. This was heartbreaking. Didn't you boast that you're very powerful? Then if you have the ability, go find the natives of the sky beyond heaven. What are you doing in front of us? Who said I won't find the natives of the sky beyond heaven? Tang Zheng asked. What? Everyone was shocked. They thought that they had heard wrongly. I'm going to find the natives of the sky beyond heaven. Tang Zheng said resolutely. He had planned this in advance. It was just that he didn't understand the situation of the sky beyond heaven. Since he had encountered the Righteous Alliance, he naturally had to ask them about it. He didn't have any requests for these Righteous Alliance members. Moreover, seeing these Righteous Alliance members, he was extremely disappointed. Everyone looked at him in disbelief. They felt that he was most likely boasting. Who didn't know how to make irresponsible remarks? Tang Zheng didn't intend to persuade anyone. He directly asked Taixuzi, "First, tell me about the current situation of the sky beyond heaven. What's the situation of the natives of the sky beyond heaven?" As soon as these words came out, it caused another round of exclamations. No one expected Tang Zheng to ask this. After all, this was common knowledge. No one would go through so much trouble to ask such a common question. Many people couldn't guess the reason behind it. Baimei Daoist lowered his head thoughtfully. The origins of these two people are very strange. It's as if they appeared out of thin air. After so many years, I've never heard of such a person. After all, such powerful people are definitely not unknown people. As the leader of the Righteous Alliance, how could I not have heard of them? Moreover, they asked this question the moment they arrived. It's really too strange. Then where did they come from? Could it be that they came from another world? He had a flash of inspiration and an unbelievable idea popped up. That's not very possible, right? He shook his head and rejected this idea. After all, this was too shocking. In these hundreds of years, he had never heard of anyone who could break through the spatial restriction and come to the sky beyond heaven. Baimei Daoist was no stranger to the spatial restriction. It was just that he didn't have the ability to break through the spatial restriction. Impossible, impossible. How could he have the ability to break through the spatial restriction? I must be imagining things. However, after thinking for a long time, he still couldn't figure out Tang Zheng's origin. Although Taixuzi had many doubts in his heart, he still said everything he knew. The situation in the sky beyond heaven is very complicated. In the past, when the Devil Clan was still around, there were a total of 4 forces. Now that the Devil Clan is gone, there are only 3 forces left. 3 forces? How can there be 3 forces? Tang Zheng was shocked. Xiaobai raised an eyebrow. He was also attracted. According to common sense, shouldn't there be only the Righteous Alliance and the natives of the sky beyond heaven? Where did the third force come from? Seeing that the two of them didn't understand the situation in the sky beyond heaven, many people had more doubts in their hearts. However, no one interjected. Just now, they were all shocked by Tang Zheng's aura. Taixuzi continued, "The Righteous Alliance is naturally one of them. The other 2 forces are the natives of the sky beyond heaven." There are 2 forces in the natives of the sky beyond heaven? Yes, there are 2 forces, one big and one small. Moreover, we've encountered them before. The big force is our sworn enemy and wants to kill us. These are the Righteous Alliance, while the small force coexists peacefully with us. They don't take the initiative to cause trouble, and are known as the opposition. The Righteous Alliance and the opposition? Tang Zheng and Xiaobai looked at each other. This was indeed a new piece of news. Who was the opposition? How dare they go against the Righteous Alliance? From what Tang Zheng had seen and heard last time, the official power was extremely strong. Who would eat a bear's heart and leopard's guts to go against them? Actually, we're also very curious about the identity of the opposition. However, we're still outsiders to the sky beyond heaven. After so many years, we still haven't figured it out, Taixuzi said and cast a meaningful look at Tang Zheng. Back then, when Tang Zheng was bluffing and scaring the natives of the sky beyond heaven, he only revealed a little bit of information. He called those people traitors. Therefore, Taixuzi guessed something. Could it be that Tang Zheng was related to the opposition? Tang Zheng understood the look in Taixuzi's eyes, but he couldn't answer him. After all, he didn't know the identity of the opposition. Didn't Xiaobai say that the royal family has been completely wiped out? The Red Lunar Beast also said that the remaining royal family members were all sacrificed. Who would dare to go against the Righteous Alliance? Isn't this the same as eating a bear's heart and a leopard's guts? Tang Zheng shook his head and said in amazement, "It seems that no world is united. Even the sky beyond heaven is divided into 2 forces. If that's the case, I'm interested in visiting the opposition. To read the latest novel, please visit Chapter 1496. As Taixuzi explained, Tang Zheng and Xiao Bai gained a general understanding of the situation in Beyond Avalon. However, they were both interested in the so-called opposition. 81 Chinese Omega Network. No matter who the opposition was, since they dared to openly oppose the government, it was naturally possible to rope them in. When he heard that Tang Zheng wanted to visit this power, Bai Mei Daoist snorted and said, "Humph, this group of people is very secretive. We haven't been able to find them after so many years. You want to visit them? What a fool's dream." After hearing this ridicule, Tang Zheng did not back down. He glanced at him and said, "Just because you can't find them doesn't mean that others can't." White Eyebrows Daoist suddenly froze. He held his breath and said, "Then you think that you're blind and don't know anything, but you're more powerful than all of us righteous Dao people?" All these years, the good faction had not given up on finding the opposition. After all, the enemy of one's enemy could become one's friend. However, things did not go according to plan. In the end, they came up empty-handed. Tang Zheng did not say anything. The answer was self-evident. Bai Mei Daoist and the other people's expressions darkened. However, the people of Kingsaman did not have much of a reaction. They seemed to believe Tang Zheng's words. After all, they had seen how Tang Zheng could scare off the enemy with just a few words. Therefore, they were very confident in his abilities. Since they had confirmed their target, Tang Zheng did not plan to argue with Bai Mei Daoist. Since they were on different paths, they could not work together. After all, they would not be able to provide any valuable clues. Kingsaman is with us. What else can we do? Tang Zheng asked Taixuzi. Taixuzi immediately fell into a dilemma. This was not only related to his life and safety, but also to the hundreds of people in Kingsaman. This was not a decision he could make with just a few words. After all, he had experienced the dangers of the outside world. If anything happened to him, he would be a sinner in Kingsaman. However, Tang Zheng had saved everyone in Kingsaman, and his strength was extraordinary. If they followed him, they might have a better future than staying in the wildlands. Bai Mei Daoist's expression changed drastically. He stared at Taixuzi sternly and said, "Taixuzi, if you want to leave, you will be betraying the righteous path. Think about the consequences. From now on, you can forget about having a foothold in Kingsaman." Bai Mei Daoist's direct threat made Tang Zheng's brows furrow even tighter. But after a while he figured out the whole story. The reason Bai Mei Daoist had such a big reaction and said such harsh words was because he was afraid of something. Although Kingsaman was a small sect, it was still a member of the righteous path. If Bai Mei Daoist allowed Kingsaman to leave, there would definitely be a crack in the alliance of the righteous sects. If Bai Mei Daoist's authority was challenged and questioned, others would question it again in the future. Then other sects would be tempted to leave the alliance of the righteous sects. After all, no one wanted to be suppressed by others, especially the leaders of the various sections. In the past, no one had ever taken the lead. Now that Taixuzi had taken the lead, others would naturally follow suit. This concerned the survival of the alliance of the righteous sects. Bai Mei Daoist dared not be careless. Taixuzi was a little slower, but he also understood this point. His departure would not only affect the safety of Kingsaman, but also the survival of the alliance of the righteous sects. What should he do? Taixuzi looked left and right. For a moment, he was unsure of what to do. After all, he did not know Tang Zheng well. Once he left the alliance of the righteous sects, he would be in great danger. Staying in the wildlands would at least be safe for the time being. Most importantly, Bai Mei Daoist was not a kind person. Instead, he was a narrow-minded person. He would definitely deal with those who dared to betray him in public. The danger that Kingsaman would face would not only come from the officials of the Beyond Avalon, but also from Bai Mei Daoist. It would not be a good feeling to be attacked from both sides. Taixuzi wanted to retreat. He looked at Tang Zheng with shame and lowered his head. He said, "Senior, I'm sorry. Kingsaman is very weak after this catastrophe. We can't take it anymore. We need to recuperate." Before he could finish, Tang Zheng waved his hand and interrupted him. He comforted him. Don't feel burdened. I respect your decision. As he spoke, his eyes became sharp, like a sharp knife shining with cold light. He glanced around fiercely and finally, his eyes fell on Daoist's white eyebrows. However, if anyone dares to cause trouble for Kingsaman, they will be going against me. When the time comes, I will make them regret ever being born into this world. This sentence was too threatening. This was the effect that Tang Zheng wanted. He wanted to make a direct threat. Even if you don't want to admit defeat, you have to hold it in. Bai Mei Daoist snorted coldly. His expression was extremely ugly. Taixuzi was very excited. This was equivalent to Tang Zheng giving Kingsaman a protective talisman. At least, Bai Mei Daoist would not dare to act rashly for the time being. This was more than enough. Senior, may I know your name? Everyone in Kingsaman will remember your great kindness in the future. Taixuzi said gratefully. My name is Tang Zheng. Tang Zheng spoke the truth. We will meet again in the future. Taixuzi asked, Senior Tang, may I know which senior in my sect you know? Tang Zheng hesitated. He wanted to say Tian Chanzi's name, but he held back in the end. He said, You will know when you meet him in the future. There is still a senior in my sect who is still alive? Of course. Not only the people of Kingsaman, but everyone else was also shocked. In the world of cultivation, a senior in a sect was a real master. He could even decide the rise and fall of a sect. Although the distinct Void sect was currently in decline, if this senior were to return, then the distinct Void sect might have a chance to soar into the sky and regain its former glory. At that moment, not only Bai Mei Daoist, but also the other orthodox cultivators looked at Kingsaman in a different light. They did not dare to look down on them as before. Tang Zheng turned around and left. Under the gazes of the crowd, he gradually walked away, leaving behind a group of people in the savage land. They looked at each other in dismay and fell into a long period of shock. After a long time, the orthodox cultivators went underground again. Only the cold wind swept over the desolate rocks, as if it was telling the story of what had just happened. No one noticed, but a figure quietly appeared on the ground and quickly chased in the direction Tang Zheng had left. In a natural cave, after being carved and chiseled by knives and axes, it looked magnificent and magnificent. It did not fit in with the environment of the wildlands. Bai Mei Daoist and his son sat facing each other. They could not hide the burning hatred in their eyes. Father, are we just going to take it? I can't take this lying down. Bai Mei Daoist looked at his son and said in a low voice, Do you know why I named you Sacrificing Life? I want you to sacrifice the lives of others in order to protect yourself. Even the lives of everyone in the world. A trifling person of unknown origin also wants to give orders in my territory and break the pattern. Then we can only sacrifice their lives. Daoist Master White Eyebrows said with a murderous aura. Chapter 1497. Whitebrow Taoist priest smirked and smirked. Don't you remember what happened to us? Ximing nodded. Of course I remember, it was Kingsaman. 81st Chinese Network. Bai Mei Daoist shook his head. No, you've only grasped the surface of the problem. What about the deeper reason? The deeper reason? Ximing fell into deep thought. Suddenly, his eyes lit up and he couldn't help but ask. Father, are you saying that the realm beyond heaven's officials are hunting down that Tang guy? Bai Mei Daoist looked at him approvingly. You're worth teaching, my son. You're a smart man after all. Ximing scratched his head and laughed mischievously. That's the crux of the matter. The realm beyond heaven's officials have been hunting down that Tang guy. If we tell them about his whereabouts, what do you think will happen? Bai Mei Daoist asked. Ximing's eyes shone brighter and brighter, as if he could already foresee that scene. He couldn't help but smile coldly. That guy surnamed Tang is dead for sure. His foundation is also dead for sure, Ximing asserted. When the time comes, we'll deal with Kingsaman. That sect has completely declined and should disappear from this world. Bai Mei Daoist's tone was calm, but his words were chilling. Then how are we going to inform the realm beyond heaven's officials? Ximing asked worriedly. This was a thorny problem. Both sides were enemies and there was no channel for communication. Moreover, this matter couldn't be made known to others. After all, it was a conspiracy and not something to be proud of. I've been thinking about this problem. Daoist's white eyebrows muttered. His gaze fell on Sa Ming. Sa Ming, you've always been under my protection. Everything has been smooth sailing. After experiencing this, I think it's necessary for you to gain some experience. A sapling in a greenhouse can't grow into a towering tree. Only by being battered by the wind and rain can you become a pillar of support. Xi Ming's complexion immediately changed. It became extremely unsightly and turned deathly white. He had already understood the profound meaning behind his father's words. Father, you want me to pass on the message? Xi Ming asked while trembling with fear. Bai Mei Daoist nodded and said, Yes, this matter can only be between you and me. Only the heavens and the earth can know about it. No third party can know about it, so I can't let anyone else know about it. I can only ask you to make this trip. But, Gong Ming immediately retorted, That's a tiger's den. I can't guarantee my life. Bai Mei Daoist said with a cold face, So what if it's a dragon's lair or a tiger's den? It's precisely because it's a dragon's lair or a tiger's den. After barging in and coming out alive, that's the true tempering. You'll grow into an indomitable man, and I'll pass this position to you in the future. She had a belly full of bitterness. Just as she was about to continue complaining, she was frightened by her father's sharp gaze, and didn't dare to continue arguing. Bai Mei Daoist patted Xi Ming's shoulder and said earnestly, I'm not sending you to harm you. Xi Ming's face was uglier than crying. She cursed in her heart. If this isn't harming me, then what is it? Are you my father? I'm sending you not only to pass on the message, but also to do something more important. Now that the demons have left, we, the righteous path, will have to face the sky beyond heaven's officials. If we can't resolve this conflict, then our days will be very difficult. Don't tell me you want to hole up in this godforsaken place for the rest of your life? Of course not. Xi Ming shook his head without hesitation. I can't wait to leave this damned place. That's right. The ultimate goal of your trip is to ensure that we can leave this damned place. Xi Ming tilted her head. She didn't really understand what was going on. Bai Mei Daoist said patiently and patiently, In all these years, have you ever seen the sky beyond heaven's officials mobilize so many people? Although they often had conflicts with us in the past, has it ever been this serious? No. Never. That's right. Then what does this mean? It means that surname Tang is extraordinary. He's very important to the sky beyond heaven's officials. That's why they're mobilizing so many people. Xi Ming suddenly understood. Smart. Since that surname Tang is so important, then he's our bargaining chip. I believe they'll agree to our conditions. What are our conditions? We want the sky beyond heaven's officials to guarantee that they won't chase after us from now on. Furthermore, they want us to settle down in a certain area. It definitely can't be this godforsaken wildlands. Bai Mei Daoist didn't specify a specific area. After all, he couldn't completely understand the other party's thoughts. In short, as long as it wasn't this wildlands, anywhere would be 100 times better than here. Then will they agree? Xi Ming's heart trembled. He felt that his conditions were too many. He had never heard of the sky beyond heaven's officials discussing conditions with anyone before. Bai Mei Daoist hesitated for a moment, then said, If they don't agree, then they'll never know where that surname Tang is. You only need to tell them exactly what I said. I believe they'll make the right choice. Xi Ming's face was bitter. Although this mission was very dangerous and was tantamount to pulling chestnuts out of the fire, if they succeeded, then the benefits to them were self-evident. Bai Mei Daoist's position would become even more stable. No one would be able to shake his position. Naturally, Xi Ming would also benefit greatly. This would be a decisive advantage for him when he inherited the position of Alliance Master in the future. Effort and return are directly proportional. If you want to gain more, then you must pay more and take more risks. You must understand this principle. Bai Mei Daoist earnestly advised. I understand. I'll go right away. Xi Ming didn't refuse. He decided to take this risk and pull chestnuts out of the fire. Everyone was clear about the sky beyond heaven's official territory. Thus, Xi Ming's difficulty was how to guarantee that he wouldn't be killed on the spot before he could say what he wanted. After all, there were many experts on the other side. With Xi Ming's cultivation, he might not be a match for them. If he were to be killed before he could even say what he wanted, then he would have died an unjust death. He was afraid that he wouldn't be able to rest in peace. Bai Mei Daoist heavily patted Xi Ming's shoulder a few times and said earnestly, "Son, I'll leave everything to you. This matter concerns the future of us father and son, so we can't be careless. After you go out, you must be careful and endure as much as you can. When we soar into the sky in the future, then we'll be able to get back all the grievances." Xi Ming seemed to be able to see a bright future for himself. At that time, who would dare to disrespect him? "Surname Tang, if I have the chance, I'll definitely kill you with my own hands." Xi Ming silently gritted his teeth. Tang Zheng naturally didn't know that Bai Mei Daoist and his son had leaked information to the sky beyond heaven's officials. He had greatly overestimated the character of this pair of father and son. Chapter 1498. A man chased after them at lightning speed. When he took a closer look, he was slightly surprised. It was not an enemy, but an acquaintance. Wild Dog. 81 Chinese network Wild Dog stopped in front of them, panting, his face ruddy, and hurriedly said, "Fortunately, I caught up with you. You are so fast that I have used up all my strength." Tang Zheng laughed involuntarily. Wild Dog was much more straightforward than Bai Mei Daoist. He spoke without thinking, which suited Tang Zheng's temper. "Why are you chasing us?" Tang Zheng asked curiously. Wild Dog smiled and said slyly, "I won't fit in if I stay. It's not like you didn't see the way Bai Mei Daoist looked at me, as if he wanted to cut me into pieces." Tang Zheng recalled and found that it was true. Bai Mei Daoist is not a kind man. If I stay, I will not have a good result. I am not like Taixuzi. After all, he has a sect behind him. I am just a lonely ghost. It is too easy for Bai Mei Daoist to deal with me. Wild Dog talked incessantly. He was very shrewd, which seemed to be very different from his appearance. "You are smart," Tang Zheng said. Wild Dog smiled bitterly. "If I didn't have this little bit of cleverness, I don't know how many times I would have died. After all, I am not like those big sections. I have a strong foundation. No one cares if I die." Tang Zheng nodded secretly. Wild Dog was alone. Under the attack of various forces, he could survive until now. This was not something that could be described as cleverness. "Since you have left Bai Mei Daoist, what is the use of chasing us?" "Hey, of course it is useful. Leaving the barbarian land, it is very dangerous outside. With my strength, I don't even know how I died. How dare I go alone?" Tang Zheng smiled. "You are open and aboveboard. I have this little bit of strength and you found it." Wild Dog said humorously. "You want to go with us? But the place we are going to is very dangerous. Aren't you afraid? We're going to look for the opposition. It's hard to predict how dangerous it will be." Tang Zheng asked deliberately. Wild Dog shrugged, looking fearless. "It's safer to follow you than to stay. Besides, it's precisely because you went to find the opposition that I came to catch up." Tang Zheng heard the subtle meaning in his words. He thought for a moment and asked curiously, "Do you know anything about the opposition?" Wild Dog was stunned for a while. He raised his thumb high and praised, "Amazing. I didn't say a word, but you guessed it. You are really a master. It seems that my decision to catch up with you this time is really wise." Tang Zheng's head moved. He happened to be in the dark. If Wild Dog knew the news of the opposition, it would be like sending a light to him in the dark. However, he did not rush to express his excitement. Instead, he calmed down. After all, Wild Dog was a member of the righteous faction. They had not known each other for long and did not know each other well. One could not judge a person by their appearance. One could not judge a person's character just by a few words. Therefore, Tang Zheng pretended to be deep and unfathomable. Seeing that Tang Zheng was silent, Wild Dog became anxious. If Tang Zheng did not believe him, or did not accept him, then he would be in trouble, because the news of his departure must have reached Bai Mei Daoist's ears. His way out had been blocked. It was impossible for him to leave the barbarian land alone. That would only lead to faster death. He looked at Tang Zheng excitedly and asked, "You don't believe me?" "Don't. I really know the news of the opposition. I'm not lying to you." Tang Zheng was still silent. His eyes were like searchlights, staring at him with bright eyes. Wild Dog knew that if he could not tell the truth, the other party would never believe him. The other party was a smart person, and was not so easy to fool. Of course, he did not intend to fool Tang Zheng. He really had something. He thought for a moment and said, "I am a lonely ghost. I have to travel north and south and cultivate with difficulty. But once I passed by a place, I met a mysterious team. The other party was a native of Sky Beyond Sky. I observed them for a long time, and found that they were not from the government. Since they were not from the government, their identity was obvious. They could only be from the opposition. Besides, it is impossible for the government to go to such a dangerous place." Tang Zheng was secretly delighted. He did not expect Wild Dog to know the clues. He said without a smile, "Dangerous place, where is that?" "Suicide Valley." "Suicide Valley? Where is that?" Tang Zheng asked in surprise. Wild Dog was stunned. He looked at Tang Zheng as if he was looking at an alien and said, "You don't know about Suicide Valley. This is known to everyone in Sky Beyond Sky. It is a dangerous place where no one is allowed to enter. Even the government does not dare to set foot in it." Previously, when Tang Zheng asked Taixuzi about the situation in Sky Beyond Sky, it gave people a feeling that he did not seem to be from this world. How could he not know anything? But perhaps there was another explanation. That was, he had been in seclusion for too long, so he did not know the situation outside. This was why he had this question. Now he did not even know about Suicide Valley. He had never even heard of this name. This was very strange. People in Sky Beyond Sky, whether old people or children, almost everyone knew about Suicide Valley. It was said that the first thing a child could remember was to never set foot in Suicide Valley. Wild Dog swallowed his saliva and asked, "Where did you come from?" Tang Zheng's head was cold. He knew that his words must have revealed a flaw, but he was not in a hurry. Wild Dog's guess alone was not enough to pose any threat to him. This question, "Do you really want to know?" The corner of Tang Zheng's mouth hooked up as he asked with a smile that was not a smile. Wild Dog's heart trembled. He was really looking for death. How could he ask this question so rashly? This must be the other party's secret. If he knew, his life would be in danger. After all, only the dead could keep secrets the best. Wild Dog really wanted to slap himself in the face. He had no control over his mouth. Wasn't he courting death? No, I'm just saying it casually. Don't take it seriously." Wild Dog immediately said, looking at Tang Zheng pleadingly. He seemed to be saying, "Don't kill me. I don't know anything. I won't say anything." Tang Zheng was just scaring him. He didn't really want to do anything to him. Seeing that it was about time, he said, "Then can you take us to Suicide Valley?" Wild Dog swallowed his saliva. He wanted to refuse, but he couldn't say it out loud. He could only bitterly say, "All right." The Suicide Valley was a dangerous place, and he didn't know if he would be able to leave after entering. Last time, he didn't accidentally enter the Suicide Valley, but was chased by someone. He had no choice but to escape into the Suicide Valley, and only then was he able to escape the pursuit. However, he didn't dare to go deep. After lurking in the periphery for a period of time, and seeing the natives of Sky Beyond Sky from afar, he didn't dare to go deep. He ran wildly and escaped from Suicide Valley. Wild Dog also got on the somersault cloud. He curiously stepped on it a few times and clicked his tongue in wonder. This was a real cloud. He had thought that it was a magic treasure that used clouds as a disguise. Now, it seemed that his knowledge was too shallow. Chapter 1499. The somersault cloud flew in the direction pointed out by the Wild Dog, and Tang Zheng and Xiao Bai talked in a low voice for a while. Xiao Bai didn't know about the existence of the Suicide Valley, which meant that the Suicide Valley didn't exist since ancient times, but might have appeared after the royal family was destroyed. 81 Chinese network. This was why this place did not exist in Little White's memories. But since the wild dog was so afraid, then the Suicide Valley was definitely not a good place. It was dangerous and unpredictable, so he should be more careful. As for the wild dog's intention, Tang Zheng wasn't worried. The wild dog was only in the Yuanying realm, so he wouldn't dare to play tricks in front of him. Otherwise, he would die without a doubt. Along the way, Tang Zheng had a clearer understanding of the situation in the sky beyond heaven, especially the things that happened in the past few hundred years. Back then, the demon clan and the righteous faction were expelled to the sky beyond heaven together, but they suffered all kinds of torture. After all, the demon clan and the righteous faction came from the same world. They even tried to form an alliance to fight against the enemy together, but later on, there were many internal conflicts and the alliance collapsed. After all, the two sides were sworn enemies who had fought for countless years. How could they really form an alliance in a short period of time? Moreover, there was no absolute powerhouse who could forcefully form an alliance between the two sides. In those years, the number of cultivators dropped sharply. Later on, someone calculated that it had dropped by more than half. Xianin, you are really too ruthless. An expulsion plan killed so many people. Tang Zheng sighed. Back then, the sky beyond heaven hoped to use the killing of cultivators to plunder their energy and inject it into the sky beyond heaven to maintain the stability of the sky beyond heaven. During the war in the sky beyond heaven, this world was seriously affected and was on the verge of collapse. This was their repair plan. Now it seemed that it was successful. At least with Tang Zheng's perception, this world was very stable and wouldn't collapse. The longer he talked with the two, the more certain the wild dog was about his guess. These two were definitely not from this world, otherwise they wouldn't be so ignorant about this world. The somersault cloud wasn't too fast. After all, he was afraid of being discovered, so he tried his best to hide his whereabouts. The day receded, and the night fell. The blood moon hung high in the sky, dyeing the world with a faint layer of red. It was extremely strange. Since Wild Dog concluded that the two of them came from another world, he guessed that they definitely did not understand the darkness of the outland heavens. Like a guide, he volunteered to explain. It is said that the first batch of people who had just been expelled were shocked when they saw the blood moon, thinking that it was the end of the world. I was born in the realm beyond heaven, so I've seen the blood moon since I was young, so I'm used to it. The dark night of the sky beyond heaven is very dangerous, especially the Suicide Valley. We are almost there, so let's wait until dawn before we go in. Wild Dog pointed at a mountain range in front of them. This mountain range was actually floating in midair. There was no foundation below it, only clouds and mist. Because of the blood moon, everything appeared to be a strange red. Seeing Wild Dog pointing ahead, Tang Zheng narrowed his eyes slightly and stared at the mysterious mountain peak. The two mountains floated in midair, leaving a canyon between them. It was almost completely obscured by smoke. That's the Suicide Valley? Yes. The Suicide Valley is more dangerous at night than during the day. Let's enter the valley tomorrow. Tang Zheng pondered for a moment and said, the night is more dangerous than the day, which means that more things will appear at night. This means that we can have a deeper understanding of the Suicide Valley. Therefore, I think it's the best time to go in now. Wild Dog widened his eyes and swallowed his saliva. A thought came to his mind. This is really not afraid of death. It was not that Tang Zheng was not afraid of death, but he was confident in his own strength. Moreover, he was eager to know the situation of the Suicide Valley. Finding the opposition as soon as possible would be crucial to his next plan. Let's go. Tang Zheng did not give Wild Dog a chance to object. With an order, the somersault cloud quietly flew to the front of the valley and landed. Wild Dog's heart was in his throat. His eyes rolled around, afraid that there would be some danger. Xiao Bai couldn't stand it anymore. He snorted and said, "What are you afraid of? The more afraid you are of death, the faster you will die. Besides, with me and Master here, you are still so afraid of death. Don't you not trust us?" Wild Dog hurriedly shook his head. "No, it's not that I don't trust you too. It's just that this place is too scary." Xiao Bai snorted coldly and turned his head away. not looking at Wild Dog's frightened expression. In fact, Tang Zheng really wanted to fly directly into the heart of the Suicide Valley, but Wild Dog's performance made him feel that it was better to be careful. This Suicide Valley was a dangerous place, so he had to explore it step by step from the outside to the inside. He could attack if he wanted to, but he could also defend if he wanted to. That was the perfect strategy. The somersault cloud landed in the clouds, as if it had merged with the clouds in the outside world. When they jumped off the somersault cloud and landed on the ground, they couldn't see anything in front of them. They couldn't even see their fingers in front of them. How did you see someone last time in such a thick fog? Tang Zheng asked with a frown. Wild Dog smiled bitterly and said, last time I came in during the day. The fog during the day will dissipate a lot, so I can see a lot more clearly. Tang Zheng came to a realization and looked ahead. Since he couldn't see clearly, he could only explore step by step. He didn't let Wild Dog lead the way. After all, Wild Dog was too scared. His entire body was already tense, like a bow that was pulled into a full moon. Whitey volunteered and took the lead. They chose a direction and advanced in large strides. The surroundings were quiet and deathly still. It was as if there were no living things in this valley. There were many rotten leaves on the ground, and one after another, grotesquely shaped and extremely ugly towering trees pierced straight into the clouds. After walking for a while, Tang Zheng's only thought was that it was ugly. Every blade of grass, tree, and even rock here was much uglier than other places. Xiaobai couldn't help but tease. Wild Dog, you came to the right place. This is equivalent to you coming home. Wild Dog's face was filled with resentment. He couldn't even smile bitterly. The valley was very deep, and their speed was not slow. After walking for a while, Wild Dog said, last time I saw those people here. Tang Zheng and Xiaobai stopped at the same time. Since they had appeared here before, this place had become dangerous. After all, they had to be careful. Rustle, rustle, rustle. They stepped on the leaves, making a slight sound. This sound was particularly obvious in the dark night, and even a little ear-piercing. Stop! Tang Zheng's ears pricked up, and he suddenly waved his hand and shouted. Xiaobai and Wild Dog stopped at the same time. Wild Dog panted and stared at everything in the darkness with his eyes wide open. He asked, what's wrong? Xiaobai also didn't understand and asked, Master, what did you find? The sound of our footsteps just now. There seems to be something wrong. Tang Zheng was very careful and found a clue. Footsteps. Chapter 1500. What was wrong with the footsteps? Tang Zheng pondered for a while and said with certainty, the footsteps just now were not only ours but also others. What other people? Hearing this, Xiaobai and Wild Dog were shocked, but after carefully recalling, they did not find any clues. We have been discovered, Tang Zheng asserted. Then where is the enemy? Xiaobai and Wild Dog looked around and found no trace of other people at all. Except for a vast fog, there was nothing else. Tang Zheng did not find the enemy's whereabouts, indicating that the other party was so familiar with the Suicide Valley that he could easily hide from the eyes of the three people. Come out, hiding your head and sneaking around. What are you doing? Tang Zheng asked coldly. There was a dead silence, no answer. You don't want to come out, right? Then I'll force you out. Tang Zheng's thick eyebrows trembled, and the hidden sword in his hand lit up. Whoosh. A piercing sound suddenly sounded behind him. Whoosh. With a flash of sword light, he reversed in the air and slashed behind him. At the same time, he suddenly turned around and swept his torch-like eyes. There was still no figure, but the piercing sound came in front of him, just in time to be intercepted by the hidden sword. With a splash of sparks, it disappeared without a trace. The other party is hiding in the fog, Tang Zheng said sharply. Then I'll force him to show up. Xiaobai volunteered, flames rising in his hand. I'll do it, Tang Zheng said. Xiaobai's flames could not disperse the fog. Moreover, the fog was so thick that the sword light might not be able to completely shatter it. But he was not worried because he had another magical ability, cloud travel and rain. This was the magical ability of the Dragon Clan, and this was the time to use it. Whoosh. A gust of wind rose from the ground, rolling up the fog and forming a cloud. The cloud and fog soared and flew into the air. A large space immediately opened up around them. Without the fog, they could clearly see things within a few meters. Tang Zheng did not stop. Instead, he continued to circulate his power. Immediately, the gale grew stronger, and the Suicide Valley gradually revealed its true appearance. Whoosh! Whoosh! A series of piercing sounds rang out unexpectedly. The other party had obviously realized that the situation had taken a turn for the worse, so they launched an attack without thinking. Moreover, this attack was extremely terrifying, capable of toppling mountains and overturning seas. The other party had obviously realized that there was no way to continue hiding, so they simply launched a fierce attack. Unfortunately, Tang Zheng had figured out a trick, and a lot of the fog had disappeared. He made a prompt decision to counterattack, and a dazzling sword light instantly enveloped an area with a radius of dozens of meters. Boom! With a muffled sound, a few figures fell out of the fog and lay on the ground not far away. Xiao Bai's eyes were sharp and his hands were fast. With a point of his finger, a ball of flame burned around that person. The raging fire was like a cage that completely imprisoned the other party. There was no way for him to escape. The wild dog was dazzled. Tang Zheng and Xiao Bai's cooperation was flawless. The opponent had no way to resist at all. Stand up. I'm very interested to see who you are. Tang Zheng stood outside the flames and stared at these people with a burning gaze. Several people stood up one after another. One of them was particularly eye-catching. Her long hair flowed down, and it was actually a girl. Her beautiful eyes were filled with disbelief. How did you break my spell? She asked, unwilling to give up. The fog was deliberately released by her to serve as a cover. More importantly, she was originally one with the fog, so she could hide in the fog. But when Tang Zheng was summoning clouds and rain, she felt as if her body was about to be torn apart, which forced her to show herself. With one strike, she didn't gain anything. Instead, she fell into the hands of the enemy. On the other hand, she was even more shocked. These people obviously didn't accidentally enter the Suicide Valley, but specifically came for the Suicide Valley. For so many years, no one had ever dared to do this. After all, the Suicide Valley represented death, and no one wanted to be associated with death. You guys are good at hiding, but you can't escape my ears. Tang Zheng pointed at his ears and sneered. The other party sighed. She had indeed hidden herself very well. She was one with the fog and couldn't be distinguished from it. So much so that her name was named after the fog. However, the people around her didn't have her ability. Instead, they relied on her to use the fog as a cover and keep the enemy's pace in line so that they wouldn't be easily detected. However, Tang Zheng's senses were too sharp. Even so, it didn't escape his ears. Since you've shown yourself, then take me to see your people. Tang Zheng glanced at the other party and confirmed that this girl was probably a key figure, so he directly said to her, "Aren't you afraid of death? This is the Suicide Valley." The fog asked suspiciously. This was very different from the people who had mistakenly entered this place in the past, causing her to be filled with curiosity. All of you are alive and well here, which means that the Suicide Valley is not as dangerous as the rumors say. Tang Zheng said indifferently. You'll regret it. The fog slyly said. If you want to see the rest of us, then let me go. Tang Zheng gave Xiao Bai a look. Xiao Bai understood and removed the flames, but a few small flames landed on their wrists, forming a bracelet made of intertwined flames. The few of them tried to resist, but it was useless. Instead, they screamed miserably and had no choice but to give up. Looking at their deflated expressions, Xiao Bai laughed complacently. Don't even think about breaking free from my flames. If you dare to play any tricks, this small ball of flames will devour you. No one can save you. You, bewildering mist, and the others grimaced, glaring at Whitey angrily. Xiao Bai was not afraid at all. Instead, he stared back. Let's go. Tang Zheng pointed to the front and urged. The fog walked to the front. Wherever they passed, the fog automatically parted to the sides, no longer blocking the path ahead. This way their speed was very fast. Everyone be careful. Tang Zheng whispered to Xiao Bai and the wild dog. Such a big battle just now must have alarmed the enemy, so they must have a sneak attack from the dark. The fog looked back 3 times with every step, as if trying to imprint Tang Zheng's appearance in her mind. Walala! A waterfall fell from the sky, flying straight down from a mountain stream. However, the water was as black as ink, exuding a dangerous aura. Unknowingly, they had walked into a graveyard. Numerous wordless tombstones stood quietly in rows and columns, as if they were silently saying something. When Xiao Bai saw these tombstones, his heart seemed to have been hit hard. His eyes became unpredictable. Tang Zheng noticed his strange behavior and asked with concern, "Xiao Bai, what's wrong with you?" Xiao Bai shook his head slowly and said thoughtfully, "Master, these tombstones seem a bit strange. When I stepped into this place, I couldn't calm down." To read the latest novel, please visit Chapter 1501. Xiao Bai could not calm down. What was so special about this graveyard? Tang Zheng thought hard, but in the end he could not figure it out. Ain't one of them text Delta Network. Since he could not figure it out, he would just keep moving forward. When the time was right, the answer would come naturally. There were many tombstones, giving people a gloomy feeling. Not far away, there was a waterfall that was as dark as ink. That made people feel even more uneasy. Xiao Bai could not hold back and asked impatiently, "Who are buried in these tombs?" The mist rolled her eyes at him. She did not expect him to ask this question, but she obviously did not want to answer him. Xiao Bai's emotions became more and more difficult to calm down. It was as if these tombs had some mysterious power that kept stirring his heart. Whitey suddenly stopped in its tracks and stared straight at the fog, looking as if it would not stop until it got the answer out of him. "You have to tell me, who are buried in these tombs?" Xiao Bai's reaction was out of Tang Zheng's expectations. He knew Xiao Bai very well. If there was no real problem, it would not be so stubborn. "Xiao Bai, what's wrong?" Xiao Bai shook his head silently. Tang Zheng turned to look at the mist and said sternly, "If you don't tell me, then I can't guarantee the safety of your companions." The threat in his words was self-evident. The mist's expression changed. She clenched her teeth and squeezed out 2 words from between her snow-white teeth. "Shameless." Tang Zheng smiled and said, "If you don't tell me the truth, I have something even more shameless." The mist huffed and puffed, obviously admitting defeat. She said helplessly, "These are warriors who died in battle many years ago." "Warriors? How many years is many years?" Tang Zheng asked. "Tens of thousands of years ago." "That long?" Tang Zheng exclaimed. The mist rolled her eyes at him and said, "The realm beyond heaven has a long history. Don't talk about tens of thousands of years, hundreds of thousands of years, or even millions of years is not that long ago. There are also tombs of the imperial family from hundreds of thousands of years ago in the imperial city. This is not something that you outsiders can imagine." From her words, she was obviously very proud. She had already pointed out that Tang Zheng and the others were outsiders. This identity could not be clearer. It was almost impossible to figure it out. Tang Zheng didn't care about the contempt and provocation in her words. Instead, he and Xiao Bai looked at each other and saw the deep meaning in each other's eyes. Xiao Bai nodded gently in response to Tang Zheng's question. He meant that there was indeed a tomb of the imperial family in the imperial city. This was the content of his memory. However, he didn't expect that the current government would betray the royal family and leave behind the royal family's grave. Xiao Bai thought that the royal tombs had been destroyed. He couldn't help but feel a little excited. Those buried in the imperial tombs were all his ancestors. Since they still existed, they had to be preserved in perfect condition. No one was allowed to destroy them. He couldn't wait to fly to the imperial city and pay respects to his ancestors. He suppressed his emotions and pointed at the nameless tombstone. He asked again, "You said that they were warriors. What heroic deeds did they do?" The mist almost blurted out, but immediately became vigilant. She said, "This has nothing to do with you. Why are you asking so clearly?" These people were outsiders. Their motives were not pure. If she told them too much and they did something bad to the tombs, then she would be a sinner. Therefore, She kept her mouth shut and didn't reveal a single word. Seeing her reaction, Xiaobai said anxiously, "Who said it has nothing to do with me? I'm also Xiaobai." Tang Jing shouted, cutting off Xiaobai's words. Xiaobai stopped abruptly. He suddenly realized the sensitivity of his identity and couldn't help but swallow the second half of his sentence. The mist coldly snorted and said, "You don't have anything to say? You want to lie to me? Do you think I'm that easy to fool?" Wild Dog didn't say a word. He looked deeply at Xiaobai. He seemed to be thinking about something, but cleverly didn't say a word. The group walked past the tombstones with different moods and arrived in front of the giant waterfall. Rumble. With a loud sound, the inky black water flowed down 3,000 feet. Looking up, the source of the waterfall seemed to reach the clouds, blending into the dark sky. "Where are your people?" Tang Zheng asked. "If you see them, don't regret it." The mist reminded him. "Don't waste time. Of course I won't regret it." "Good, then, as you wish," the mist said. She looked at the waterfall and muttered a few words. Finally she shouted, "Open! Rumble, rumble, rumble." The mountains shook and the earth trembled as if there was an earthquake. "What's going on? What's going on?" Wild Dog looked around in panic and screamed. Tang Zheng and Xiaobai were calm. The two of them tacitly looked at the waterfall. They saw that there was a huge opening in the cliff of the waterfall. The cliff was split into two, and the waterfall was also split in two. "This scene is really shocking." Tang Zheng couldn't help but sigh. A huge gap appeared between the cliffs, like a door. Wild Dog finally stopped crying. He stared at the door in shock. No one would have thought that there was a world behind the waterfall. The mist glanced at them with satisfaction. She couldn't help but be disappointed. Besides Wild Dog, the other two didn't have much of a reaction. This scene didn't seem to shock them at all. "No wonder you can hide so well. Normal people can't find the world behind the waterfall." Tang Zheng praised. "Master, look at the water of the waterfall." Xiaobai pointed at the waterfall and exclaimed. Taking a closer look, the water of the waterfall turned from black to clear and transparent. There was no trace of its previous terrible appearance. "All of this is your disguise. Even this suicide valley is your disguise. You deliberately made it into a dangerous place, right?" Tang Zheng immediately thought of a possible situation. The mist looked at him in shock and asked in shock, "How do you know?" "Sure enough. There must be some unknown secret. That's why the other side put in so much effort. If they knew this secret, then all the problems would be solved. Don't dawdle. Quickly take us to see your people." Tang Zheng didn't want to waste any more time. He was eager to know the answer, so he immediately urged. A cunning look flashed in Mist's eyes. She walked toward the door. It turned out that the river below the waterfall had automatically split in two, revealing the dry riverbed. Above it was a stone staircase. Climbing the stairs, they came to the door. Without hesitation, Mist and the others walked in. Tang Zheng and the other two followed closely behind. Boom! With a muffled sound, the gap in the cliff closed, and the door disappeared. The waterfall returned to its black color, and the group disappeared into the cliff. Hearing the movement behind him, he turned his head to take a look. When he saw that his retreat was completely blocked, his heart palpitated, but in the end he endured it. The three of them were not ordinary people. This place might not be able to trap them. There was a faint light in all directions. Even without the use of fire, they could still vaguely see the surrounding scene. It was all bare stone walls. However, before they could move forward, the overwhelming darkness came unexpectedly. The light completely disappeared, and the darkness swallowed everyone. Even the light in their hands did not have much effect. Mist and the others had been wearing Xiaobai's flame rings on their wrists, like handcuffs. They were particularly conspicuous in the darkness. But at this moment, the flames were also swallowed by the darkness and disappeared. Xiaobai exclaimed. The flames were swallowed. They are free. They are free? Tang Zheng also shouted. He was very clear about the power of Xiaobai's flames. But at this moment, they were able to escape so easily. This was enough to show that the situation had changed completely. Everyone be careful. He only had time to remind them before the light was completely swallowed by the darkness. They fell into a state where they couldn't even see their own fingers. Ah! Wild Dog's scream suddenly sounded. He quickly flew into the distance, and then stopped abruptly. Let him go. Tang Jing shouted loudly, but to no avail. The wild dog disappeared without a trace, completely disappearing into the darkness. Chapter 1502. The people disappeared. And the wild dog was also swallowed up by the darkness, disappearing without a trace. 81 Ohms Chinese network. Tang Jing and Xiao Bai looked at each other, shocked and angry. Xiao Bai grinned and said angrily, Master, I'll chase after them. Together. What if there's danger? Xiao Bai was worried. If there's danger, I can't let you take the risk alone. Tang Jing didn't listen and rushed into the darkness. Xiao Bai had no choice but to follow like a shadow. A flame floated in front of the two, illuminating the path ahead. However, the flame seemed to be suppressed by the darkness and couldn't illuminate far. Step by step, there seemed to be no end. The world behind the waterfall was a completely different world, completely unfathomable. Puff! The flame flickered and was extinguished without warning. Master, be careful! Xiao Bai shouted and hurriedly stood in front of Tang Jing to protect him. With a boom, the flame rose from his body, illuminating the space a little. However, this time the flame didn't burn fiercely. Instead, the darkness immediately counterattacked, trying to completely swallow the flame. The aggressiveness was very obvious. Not only that, Tang Jing felt that he was in a strange realm. The darkness became sticky, like seawater, submerging his body and trying to swallow him. Xiao Bai, don't fight back. Recalling the traces of the wild dog's disappearance, he had a thought and sent a message to Xiao Bai. Xiao Bai understood and hurriedly gave up resistance. The flame was completely extinguished. The great power of the darkness swallowed them in an instant. A mysterious force immediately enveloped them, and it had an extremely strong confinement effect. Tang Jing understood in his heart that this point was definitely controlled by someone, which was why the darkness was so powerful, just like the fog from before. The other party hid so deeply. He tried his best, but even if he defeated the attack of the darkness, he might not be able to force the other party to show up. Instead of playing hide and seek like this, it was better to fulfill the other party's wish and push the boat with the current, so that they would show up on their own. Xiao Bai believed that since they had a mysterious background, the other party would not immediately kill them. Instead, they would first imprison them and interrogate them. As a result, their lives were not in danger for the time being. Moreover, if their lives were truly in danger, they would be able to sense it. Naturally, they wouldn't just sit there and wait for death. They would strike back with lightning speed. Xiao Bai was clever and intelligent. He understood Tang Jing's gaze and words, so he chose to give up resisting. The darkness seemed to have a magical power, carrying the two of them forward quickly. The sound of the wind whistling in their ears. Light! A light appeared in front of them, growing brighter and brighter. Soon, a completely different scene appeared in front of them. It was a huge square with a tall altar in the middle. Around the square were rows upon rows of houses built against the mountains. It was a magnificent sight. However, there was one thing that was very strange. Those houses were much taller than the houses that Tang Jing had seen before. One house was 5 to 6 meters tall, and the door was much bigger as well. It was as if it was built to facilitate some kind of entrance and exit. As his gaze swept past, he was quickly attracted by the flickering figures on the altar and around it. Those shadows were hidden in the darkness. Some were tall and some were short. They were not uniform, but some of them were ridiculously tall, equivalent to 2 or 3 times the height of an ordinary person. It was very strange. The plan was a success. They have finally appeared. This should be their base camp, and from the looks of it, there are quite a few of them. Tang Jing said in his heart as he swept his gaze around. Suddenly his eyes turned cold. He saw a familiar figure, Wild Dog. He was hanging high on one side of the altar. The altar was 100 meters high. Wild Dog was hanging on the edge of the altar, standing in the air, swaying. It was unknown whether he was dead or alive. Wild Dog, you have come back to life in other places, so this time you better not die. Tang Jing thought in his heart. Suddenly he found himself flying in the air. This was the power of darkness. Xiaobai also flew to the altar. They were getting closer and closer to Wild Dog. Finally, a slight breathing sound came from Wild Dog's mouth and nose. Tang Zheng was overjoyed. Wild Dog was not dead. That was great. If Wild Dog was dead, he would feel guilty. After all, Wild Dog was counting on him to keep him safe. Now what he needed to do was to break free from the shackles. He and Little White looked at each other, and their hearts were connected. Tang Zheng roared, and the hidden profound sword flew out from his body, and the dazzling sword light scattered in all directions. Puff! Puff! The darkness was broken into pieces, and the power that imprisoned him was completely destroyed by the fierce sword chi that came out of his body. He was free. He floated in the air with his own strength. Xiaobai's counterattack was not slow at all. Flames came out of every pore of his body. Suddenly, he was surrounded by a sea of fire. He also broke free and regained his freedom. The speed of their counterattack and regaining their freedom was very unexpected. The opponents cried out in surprise and became restless. Roar! Suddenly, a strange sound came out of nowhere, and the cries of surprise disappeared immediately. The sound seemed to have magic, making them unable to think of resisting. What's that sound? Tang Zheng asked. Xiaobai said thoughtfully. It doesn't sound like a human. Xiaobai was not a human. Now that he had transformed into a human, he was very familiar with the sound. Obviously, it did not belong to a human. Not a human? Tang Zheng was shocked. He quickly looked at the source of the sound. It was from the altar. Without hesitation, he leaped into the air and saw the scene on the altar clearly. The altar was engraved with complicated patterns. It was very old, but there seemed to be a kind of life force in the silence. A figure shrouded in darkness stood on the altar. His back was completely swallowed by the darkness. His appearance could not be seen clearly, but one thing was certain. He was almost twice as tall as Tang Zheng. Tang Zheng was 1.8 meters tall. The opponent was twice as tall as him. It showed how ridiculously tall he was. He was already beyond the range of a normal human. Could it be a giant? No wonder he built such a tall house. Tang Zheng secretly guessed. No matter what it is, let me see your face first. Tang Zheng moved. The hidden sword turned into a sword light. It was like a meteor from outer space. With a whoosh, it slashed at the opponent. Roar! Another deafening sound came out. It did not sound like a human's voice. Instead, it was filled with a rough and mysterious power. A wave came from the front. It happened to meet the hidden sword. The hidden sword trembled and immediately turned back. It was very strange. The hidden sword flew back to Tang Zheng's hand. The opponent's attack was not completely neutralized. A mighty sound wave immediately entered Tang Zheng's ears. His blood boiled and his eardrums felt like they were about to burst. Sound wave attack. Tang Zheng opened his eyes wide in surprise. It was the first time he had encountered a sound wave attack. Chapter 1503. The sound wave attack was invisible, and it was an all-around attack. It reached Tang Zheng and Xiaobai like a tidal wave. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Tang Zheng swung his sword 3 times in a row. The 3 moves of the Tai Chi dual swordplay were extremely powerful. They immediately blocked the sound wave attack, and it could not go any further. Roar. Kill. His opponent roared angrily. All of this seemed to have angered him. Tang Zheng narrowed his eyes slightly. His opponent was mysterious and unpredictable. He could only move forward and tear off his opponent's disguise. Only then could he come up with a better plan. So he moved again. This time he disappeared and merged with the hidden Xian sword. Man and sword as one. He did not hesitate to use this move because the current situation was not optimistic. So he did not have time to wait and see. He might as well use his ultimate move. The hidden Xian sword's sacred inscriptions immediately shone. The 3 sacred inscriptions emitted a terrifying aura. Sacred inscriptions. His opponent roared again. He seemed to be surprised. Boom. This time it was not a sound wave attack. His opponent moved. His huge body took a step forward and walked out of the darkness. Ah! Tang Zheng was shocked as he looked at the huge body that was revealed in disbelief. In fact, this could no longer be described as simply huge. It was simply a colossus the size of a small mountain. His opponent was not a human. It was a monster. To be more precise, it was a beast. Tang Zheng had never seen it before. It had long fangs and a huge mouth. The soundwave attack must have come from that mouth. No wonder it was so huge. It even took up half of its head. It stood on all fours and had a long tail. Its body was like a hippopotamus. It was majestic and powerful. Its body was covered with scales. Tang Zheng quickly turned his head and looked at the tall and short figures below the altar. He realized that many of them had walked out of the darkness and revealed their true faces. His opponents were all different types of beasts. They were ferocious and powerful. He took a deep breath and quickly calmed down. Since Xiao Bai and the Red Lunar Beast were in the realm beyond heaven, it was not surprising that there were other types of beasts. Of course, these beasts were more powerful than many of the beasts in the human world. He could tell from their aura. Roar, roar, roar. A series of deafening roars resounded. The altar seemed to tremble a few times. The surrounding walls also trembled as if they were about to collapse. The momentum was exceptionally great. Seeing this scene, Tang Zheng understood that this suicide valley was indeed worthy of its reputation. Just these guys alone were not something that ordinary people could handle. There was no turning back. Tang Zheng and the sword of Xianzong had become one. Once the sword was out, it would be hard to pull it back. Whoosh! The hidden mystic sword was right in front of his opponent. His opponent opened his huge mouth, but no sound came out. However, a terrifying power surged out from his mouth. All of this did not mean that there was no sound. It was just that the human ear could not distinguish the frequency of this sound. This was an ultrasonic attack, and its power was even stronger than before. The hidden mystic sword suddenly slowed down as it was blocked by the supersonic waves. The sword light soared into the sky and illuminated this huge space, dispelling the darkness and exposing everything. The wild dog was in a daze. When he saw this scene with his half-closed eyes, he was shocked. His heart almost jumped out of his chest. Xiao Bai did not let Tang Zheng take the risk alone. With a roar, his body underwent an earth-shattering change. He returned to his true form and became a huge monster. Furthermore, it was getting bigger and bigger, as if there was no end to it. He was much bigger than he had ever been before. His fiery red hair was like a raging flame. The flames under his feet turned into a wheel of fire, constantly rotating. The horn on his head flickered with a dazzling red light. He was awe-inspiring and exuded an unparalleled and terrifying aura. "Master, let me help you." Xiao Bai roared. The fire wheel accelerated, and his huge body flew towards his opponent. This scene stunned everyone. Pairs of eyes widened to the extreme as they stared at Xiao Bai with bright eyes. There were too many complicated emotions that were difficult to describe. Fog was particularly small among these huge monsters. She opened her small cherry mouth and her white cheeks turned red. She could not help but breathe quickly. She swallowed a few mouthfuls of saliva before squeezing out 2 words from the depths of her throat. Miracle. After that, she found it hard to speak again. The other people's reactions were not much different. They watched this scene as if their souls had left their bodies. Their eyes followed Xiao Bai closely. There were too many indescribable and inexplicable emotions in their eyes. Xiao Bai did not notice any of this. There was only one thing in his eyes. No one could hurt his master unless they stepped over his dead body. He was doing what he had done before as usual. The power of the hidden mystic sword and Tang Zheng increased to the extreme. Although the supersonic attack temporarily restrained the hidden mystic sword, the sword light of the hidden mystic sword quickly overflowed. Soon it formed a huge sword. This huge sword had several colors intertwined on it: black, gold, purple, and blue. The 4 colors intertwined and looked very mysterious. The hidden mystic sword turned into a colorful sword. Its speed suddenly increased, and its momentum was completely different. The supersonic attack could no longer resist. Puff! The hidden mystic sword penetrated the supersonic attack and shot into that huge mouth. Xiao Bai's attack was like a shadow. He opened his mouth and continuously spouted flames. The flames were huge. As if the clouds in the sky had been ignited, they quickly landed on the huge body of the opponent. Boom! The flames burned fiercely. However, there was a pair of small eyes shining in the flames. It stared at Xiao Bai without blinking. The eyes were like the others, containing too many indescribable things. Don't attack the ancestor. Ancestor, be careful. A heart-wrenching cry immediately came from below. It hit the altar like waves. The altar shook as if it would collapse at any time. Ancestor? So this huge monster was called the ancestor. This thought flashed through Xiao Bai's mind, but he did not show any mercy. Instead, he was a bit proud. Who told you to attack the master? This is what you get. Whoosh! The fog soared into the sky, turning into a ball of fog that wrapped around the ancestor. Even the flames were wrapped in it. Crackling sounds rang out, but the fog did not retreat at all. At this moment, she was the fog, and the fog was her. She was using her life to protect the ancestor. Knight, what are you waiting for? Quickly save the ancestor. The fog's anxious voice rang out. The surrounding darkness immediately surged toward the ancestor. This space immediately turned dark. It was as if the light had been switched on, and was completely extinguished. No, the light was swallowed by the darkness, just like before. However, there was an exception. Xiao Bai's flames were still burning. Although they were affected by the fog and the dark night and were much dimmer, they were still burning non-stop. It was as if they wanted to burn everything into ashes. Translator, Atlas Studios Editor. Atlas Studios. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.